Made by Shredder Fanfiction. Like, subscribe and hype video.
The MC is reborn as the Indominus Rex. The Indominus Rex is a genetically modified hybrid, acting as the primary antagonist in the 2015 film Jurassic World. Created by Dr. Henry Wu in 2012, by blending species like T-Rex, Velociraptor, and modern animals, cuttlefish, tree frogs, it is designed as a highly intelligent, 15-meter-long, albino-colored carnivorous, featuring camouflage, thermal camouflage, and intense aggression, ultimately killed by a Mosasaurus.
What if I am the Indominus Rex in Jurassic World? Chapter 1. Not evil, just broken. It was the kind of afternoon that felt neither alive nor dead, just hanging somewhere in between. The clouds blanketed the sky in a dull, uniform gray, as if the sun had forgotten to rise. The wind moved half-heartedly, barely enough to sway the limp branches above the sidewalk. Shredder sat on the edge of a low concrete divider outside a grocery store, legs dangling, face lit by the glow of his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen, tapping slowly. He wasn't rushing. He rarely did. There was no need. The world moved fast enough without him. The tweet had started as a half-thought, like most of them did. Some vague opinion he hadn't really meant to share, but it had formed in the back of his mind while he was walking, and now it demanded to be set free. The Indominus Rex isn't evil. She's just broken. Made by people who didn't care about what she needed. He read it back twice before hitting send. A soft whoosh, and it was out there, swallowed by the endless feed of posts and noise and opinions, most of which would never matter to anyone. Shredder leaned back a little, thumb brushing the edge of his screen as he refreshed his feed. A few likes came in almost immediately. A quote retweet from someone with a cat profile pic, "Realiest thing I've read all day." He smiled faintly, not because it made him proud, but because it made him feel seen. Noticed. Like maybe there was someone else out there who had looked at that giant, manufactured dinosaur and thought the same thing. She didn't ask to be born that way. She didn't want to hurt people. She just didn't know how to be anything else. The thought lingered with him, heavier than expected. He looked up. Cars passed with mechanical indifference, rumbling engines and the occasional flash of a blinker that never got used properly. Pedestrians walked by without a glance in his direction. Life went on, in that distant, impersonal way it always did. Not evil, he said aloud to himself. Just broken. The words felt different when spoken. Thicker. More vulnerable. He tucked his phone into the front pocket of his hoodie and stood up. The concrete edge scraped lightly against his jeans as he did. His back ached a little from sitting hunched too long, and he rolled his shoulders, brushing invisible dust from his sleeves. A distant honk made him look toward the intersection. The light had just turned yellow. Shredder stepped forward, half on autopilot. His thoughts were still elsewhere, half on the tweet, half on the Indominus Rex, and more than half on how that idea didn't just apply to her. Wasn't that kind of how people worked, too? Made by circumstances. Made by others. Made by things they didn't ask for. Maybe he wasn't that different from a monster in a cage. He didn't hear the truck until it was too close. The screech of brakes shattered the dull rhythm of the city. It was sudden, sharp metal grinding on asphalt. A sound like the sky tearing. His head turned toward it instinctively. There was a flicker of movement, blue cab, silver grille, too fast. Time froze in that cruel way it always does when it matters most. Everything else blurred. A woman across the street gasped. A child dropped a balloon. A dog barked. And then there was only the impact. Thud. The world snapped back into motion. Someone screamed. The truck came to a lurching stop half a block past the crosswalk. The driver stumbled out, eyes wide in disbelief, hands trembling at his sides. People rushed forward too late, always too late. A pair of teenagers fumbled for their phones. An older man barked for someone to call 911. A woman knelt near the body, hesitating, unsure whether to touch him. Shredder lay still. His phone had skidded a few feet away, screen cracked, but miraculously still glowing. The tweet was still up, still fresh. Notifications kept pouring in. The Indominus Rex isn't evil. She's just broken. More likes. More quote tweets. More people seeing the words, not knowing the hands that wrote them were already cooling on the pavement. A light rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. The woman who knelt by him gently reached out and closed his eyes. For a few seconds, the world quieted again. Traffic held. Strangers stood in a loose circle of stunned silence, bound together by the suddenness of it all. By the way life could be so loud one second and so horribly still the next. The paramedics came, but the stillness remained. No drama. No last words. Just a soft rain and a broken phone still glowing with the last thing he ever wanted to say. She's not evil. Just broken. Chapter 2: The Cage. There was no light. Not at first. Just silence. A silence so absolute, so complete, it felt like it had weight. Like it wasn't just the absence of sound but the presence of something else, something deeper. Something final. Shredder floated in that darkness, mind untethered, unsure if he was still thinking or just remembering what thinking felt like. The last thing he remembered, the truck, the sudden scream of tires, the punch of pain flashed through his awareness in jagged fragments. And then, nothing. But slowly, very slowly, something began to return. Sensation. Weight. Pressure. The strange feeling of being. But not like before. His back didn't ache. His fingers didn't twitch. In fact, he wasn't sure he had fingers. A flicker of panic sparked through him like a jolt. Where am I? He tried to open his eyes but they were already open. He could see, but everything was strange. His vision was sharp, unnaturally sharp, but it was angled, wider than before. There were two focal points, slightly apart. It wasn't like seeing with human eyes. It was like seeing through something else. Something huge. He tried to sit up. Nothing happened. No, that wasn't true. Something happened. Just, not what he expected. A low creaking, like stone against stone, echoed around him. He realized he had moved. But not like a person would. His entire chest had shifted. Muscles he didn't recognize twitched and coiled beneath a hide he couldn't see yet. He turned his head. Or, attempted to. What followed was a slow, deliberate sweep of a massive, scaled skull. His neck stretched like a thick cable of power, and he saw the shadow of his own reflection ripple across the glass wall of the enclosure. It hit him like a tidal wave. That face. That mouth. Those rows of teeth. That size. He wasn't dreaming. He wasn't hallucinating. He was inside something huge, something prehistoric, something engineered to terrify. No. The scream didn't come from his throat. It couldn't. The throat was all wrong. Alien. Vast. Made for roaring, not for speaking. But in his mind, it was deafening. No. 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 What is this? Where am I? His body jolted in response to the mental outburst, and the cage around him, the massive metallic jungle of reinforced walls and synthetic jungle, trembled as he thrashed instinctively. Trees cracked. Metal groaned. Birds scattered from the tops of artificial branches, startled into flight. But there were no guards rushing in. No scientists with tasers or tranquilizer guns. No blaring alarms. Only silence. He froze. Slowly, almost unwillingly, he turned back to the reflection. There was no mistaking it. The grey scales. The yellow eyes. The long arms with grasping claws. The ridged skull. He was the Indominus Rex. It should have been impossible. Absurd. But there it was, in full, terrifying, undeniable clarity. He had become the very thing he had written about just before he died. "She's not evil," he whispered in his thoughts. "She's just broken." Was that why? Was that why he was here? The thought made him shiver, though now, the sensation of a shiver was more like a slow ripple across his armored hide. He breathed in deeply, an automatic instinct from this massive new body, and felt the air rush through lungs built for power, not fragility. The scent of soil, trees, and distant prey filled his senses with overwhelming clarity. It was almost intoxicating. He took a tentative step forward. The ground vibrated beneath him. Not a dream. Not a hallucination. Every step felt like a statement. Like the earth recognized his presence now. But then, a second realization stopped him cold. The cage. He looked around slowly, carefully, scanning the space. He was still enclosed. Giant concrete walls reinforced with thick bulletproof glass and hidden observation points. Synthetic forest and rocky terrain designed to mimic freedom but shaped to enforce containment. He was in the pen. That meant. This is before the breakout. Before the movie. Before everything. A rush of conflicted emotions flooded his thoughts. This hasn't started yet. He was still here, still her, and still had time. Whatever that meant. However long it might be. And the panic began to ebb, replaced by something else. Not calm. Not peace. But focus. If this was real, if he was here, if he was the Indominus Rex, then maybe he had a choice. Maybe she wouldn't have to be the monster they made her out to be. Maybe, just maybe, he could understand her. Be her, but also change her story. His thoughts lingered on the irony. He had typed it like a throwaway idea. A passing tweet. A way to defend a fictional creature because he understood what it felt like to be broken and blamed. And now, here he was. Inside her. He settled back onto the ground slowly, tail coiling slightly behind him, giant body resting with a weight that left a shallow impression in the dirt. Above him, the synthetic skylights flickered as they adjusted to simulate sunset. Shredder Indominus watched them without blinking. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for now, the world was still. No visitors. No guards. No escape attempts. No blood. Just a cage. And time. Chapter 3. Too small for a predator. Time passed in pieces. Shredder didn't sleep, not exactly. He dozed in strange intervals, still and alert at the same time. The body he inhabited didn't seem to require rest the way a human's would. Even at ease, it was awake. Coiled. Ready. He wasn't used to it yet. Every breath was immense. Every movement had weight. Even the simple act of flexing a claw sent tremors up his forelimbs. Muscles layered like steel cables shifted beneath scales as thick as armor, and with every passing hour, the truth of it settled in deeper. This wasn't a dream. It was a sentence. He rose slowly, head sweeping side to side, eyes scanning the enclosure. The jungle was artificial, trees were real, but placed like decorations. Rocks arranged just so. Every inch of it had been designed for observation, not freedom. Even the sound of water from a narrow stream at the far end felt staged. And worse, it was small. Not at first glance. At first glance, it looked enormous, acres of fabricated wilderness. But now, walking its length with careful, thunderous steps, Shredder could feel the limits. Every path curved back toward the center. Every hill led nowhere. It wasn't a habitat. It was a box. A predator like this doesn't belong in a box, he thought bitterly. Not even one shaped like a forest. He paused by a massive wall of reinforced glass. Reflections shimmered faintly in the surface. He saw his silhouette again, the heavy ridged skull, the slit pupils, the long arms hanging low with unsettling grace. It was hard to think of this body as his. Even harder to reconcile it with the person he still remembered being. But the lines were starting to blur. Because now, the memories were coming. Not his memories. Hers. They came in flashes, unbidden, raw, like broken film reels pulled from a damaged projector. A soft chirping. The feeling of another presence. Warmth beside her. A shape that matched hers, only smaller. A sister. They had shared this cage once. He didn't know how he knew that. But he did. The sister had been there, maybe not for long, but long enough to be remembered. She had made sounds, calls, clicks, low huffs. Trying to communicate. But she had not been understood. And neither had Shredder, no, she the original Indominus. Not even by her own blood. The pain came next. Hot and sharp. A memory soaked in instinct. A struggle. Panic. Teeth sinking into flesh. Blood. Shredder jerked his head sideways and let out a low, guttural growl. The sound echoed off the enclosure walls, startling a few birds from their perch. It wasn't rage. Not exactly. It was remorse. She didn't want to kill her, he realized. She didn't know how not to. She had been alone ever since. No pack. No siblings. No companionship. Just silence. Cameras. Walls. And now, he was her. Inheriting not just her power, but her pain. The thought made him reel. Was that what it meant to be a predator? Not just to kill but to survive loneliness? To endure it? He paced now, slowly, muscles rippling beneath his skin as he traced the edge of the forest. Every step felt heavier. His claws sank into the soil. The fence loomed above him at every turn. He could feel the boundaries like a tightening noose. This isn't enough, he thought. It's too small. Too calculated. A beast like this wasn't meant to be studied through glass. She wasn't supposed to have walls. She needed space, real space. Distance to roam, to hunt, to be. Yet here she was. Here he was. Trapped in a box, misunderstood, built by people who only cared about what she could do, not what she might feel. Shredder paused beneath a tree with thick roots and gnarled branches. The bark was damp. Moss grew in lines along the side, shaped by the mist vents overhead. A camera hidden in a hollow blinked softly, red light flickering. They're watching. He tilted his head, narrowing one yellow eye at the lens. He wondered if any of them noticed the change. If they saw something different now. But the lens didn't blink again. It just sat there. Cold. Unfeeling. He stepped away from it. As he moved deeper into the enclosure, his thoughts turned inward again. The memories were starting to press closer, less like images, more like instincts. Reflexes. The way her heart would race at the smell of blood. The need to lash out when cornered. The ache that came not from wounds but from waiting. Waiting for something more than this prison. Waiting for the world to begin. That's what this place was, a prelude. A prologue. A place built to hold back something unstoppable until the right moment. But the moment hadn't come yet. And that meant something. She hasn't escaped yet, he thought. No tourists. No breakout. No hunting spree. It hasn't happened. Which meant he had time. Time to understand this body. Time to understand her. Maybe even time to undo some of what had been done. He stopped by the stream and looked at the rippling surface. His reflection stared back, distorted and monstrous. But behind the eyes, he saw something else now. Something human. He wasn't the Indominus. Not completely. Not yet. But the line was thinning. And if he was going to survive, if he was going to change anything, he would have to find a way to balance both. The monster, and the man. Chapter 4: The Cage Inside. One day. 24 hours. He'd counted. Tried to, at least. The sun had risen and fallen once. The artificial lights had dimmed, then brightened again. Somewhere above him, on some schedule known only to the staff monitoring the enclosure, day had become night, and then day again. That was it. A single rotation of the Earth. And he was already starting to lose it. Shredder lay motionless near the center of the enclosure, tail curled around his massive hind legs, chin resting on the curve of a boulder. His eyes were open. They always were now. It was too easy to fall into that stillness, the kind that wasn't restful. The kind that didn't let you forget where you were or what you had become. This can't be it, he thought. This cannot be it. It was one day. Just one. And yet, his thoughts had already begun looping. Repeating like a cracked record. He'd walked the enclosure so many times that he knew where every rock sat, where each patch of moss grew, how far the tree line extended before circling back on itself. There were no surprises here. No chase. No hunt. No noise, save the occasional flutter of wings or the hiss of a mist vent. There was nothing. No stimulation. No purpose. Not even fear. Just silence. He dragged in a breath deep, low, enough to shake dust from the stone beneath his chest and exhaled through clenched teeth. It sounded like a sigh. Maybe a growl. Wasn't much difference anymore. I was a person, he reminded himself. I was someone. The thought tasted strange. Foreign. The memory of his name, his face, his humanity was already getting soft around the edges. Distant. The kind of memory you try to grasp after waking up from a dream close, but always slipping through your fingers. And yet, here he was, a mountain of meat and muscle, intelligence buried under instinct, pacing the same loop like a prisoner in solitary confinement. He stood again. Moved. Slowly, because moving gave the illusion of doing something. It didn't matter that the motions were pointless. That he was just circling his cage again. It was something. The foliage cracked beneath his steps. Leaves rustled. The tree branches, thick as telephone poles, bent under his weight when he brushed against them. Still too small. Still wrong. How long can this go on before I snap? He wondered, staring up at the sky through the gaps in the artificial canopy. 2 days? 3? A week? No answer. Just wind. And that made him angry. Not because of the silence. Not because no one was talking back. But because he meant it. He was really asking the question. Not in jest. Not philosophically. Literally. How long until the bars weren't just around the enclosure, but inside his head? I don't even know if I sleep anymore, he thought bitterly. Not like a human. Not like her either. Just, rest. Wait. Breathe. And when he did close his eyes, when he let himself slip into that not sleep, it wasn't peace that came. It was memory. Her memories. The sister. The kill. The long, lonely silence afterward. He felt it echo in his bones. This place had always been a tomb. Even before she died. The worst part wasn't the isolation. It wasn't even the monotony. It was the waiting. The sensation that everything was on pause. That life hadn't started yet. That somewhere, some clock was ticking toward an event, and he was just, here. existing in the margins, caged by time as much as space. And what did he have in the meantime? He couldn't talk, couldn't ask questions, couldn't even scream. Not in any way that would be understood. If he tried, it would just be roars. Sounds that shook the ground but changed nothing. He wanted noise. Chaos. Even fear. Anything to feel real again. Anything but this. There's nothing to chase, he whispered in his thoughts. Nothing to stalk. No prey. No rivals. No purpose. He dug a claw into the earth. It tore through the soil like a hot knife through butter. He watched the dirt crumble away from the stone underneath, then retracted the talon, flexing it. Even that was boring now. He'd done it a dozen times already. Carved trenches into the ground with claws or teeth. But there was no satisfaction. No prey to run down. No adrenaline. Just the cold fact of power, unused. It was cruel. Whoever built this cage hadn't just trapped her physically. They'd engineered a life without meaning. A test subject in a habitat. An apex predator meant to sit still while people watched. And now, he was wearing that life like a costume. He let out a long, slow breath through his nostrils. It made the leaves on the nearest tree flutter. Dust rose from the ground. I don't think I can do this for much longer, he admitted to himself. Not like this. Not for weeks. Not even for days. It had been one. Just one. And his thoughts were already pacing tighter and tighter circles. He was starting to feel the thoughts change. Words slipping into images. Logic becoming reaction. The mind of the predator was still there. Waiting. Watching. Ready to take over the moment he gave it too much room. And wasn't that the real prison? Not the fence. Not the walls. But the pressure building inside. The knowledge that even if he didn't move, the monster was always just below the surface. Ready to become him. He looked up again at the trees, then to the walls beyond them. Nothing moved. Nothing ever moved. And he knew if something didn't change soon, he'd make it change. Because the real madness wasn't the cage. It was what it was doing to him. Chapter 5: The Great Escape. He couldn't stay here. That was the conclusion he came to after another round of pacing, another cycle of looking at the same walls, the same rocks, the same trees. The thought had been lurking at the back of his mind for hours, maybe days, he wasn't even sure anymore. But now it felt clear. His mind, sharp as it was, had grown tired of merely surviving the isolation. It wasn't enough to endure anymore. He couldn't simply exist in this endless loop of boredom, of waiting for something, anything to break the monotony. He needed action. The same hunger that had once driven him to conquer his world now clawed at him from the inside, begging to be free. And the thing about being a predator? Predators didn't wait. They hunted. They escaped. If only I still had the means to escape, he thought bitterly, but then the idea clicked: if he couldn't break out, he could at least make them think he had. They wouldn't expect a creature like him to be clever enough to hide, to plan. It was all too easy to assume he was just another mindless beast trapped in the same cage. But he wasn't just some animal. He was a man, once. A strategy had to be the way out. One chance, he thought. One. If I get it wrong, it's over. First, he moved to the wall, the barrier that held him. The wall had always felt like an insurmountable obstacle, an impenetrable boundary. But now, with his claws flexing in anticipation, he felt a new purpose. His talons bit into the stone and concrete, carving long gouges in the surface. The sound of his claws scraping against the wall echoed like thunder, a deep, grinding noise that rattled in his chest. This will work, he thought, biting back the rising frustration. I'm not just scratching it. I'm marking it. Shredder slashed again, and again, leaving deep, jagged grooves in the surface. He focused on the noises. The destruction. Each gash he made would give the illusion of his escape. A creature powerful enough to tear its way through. A beast in full fury. But that wasn't the end of it. That was just part of the game. He stood back for a moment, eyeing the destruction with a calculating gaze. There was no time to waste, the clock was ticking. He needed to be more than just a dangerous animal. He needed to become invisible. Unseen. To slip away without anyone knowing. His Indominus Rex body was capable of more than just raw strength. He had other tools at his disposal. The things that made him not just a predator but a ghost. He concentrated. He could feel the heat radiating from his body, the way his blood hummed beneath his skin. He reached deep inside, and with a subtle shift, he deactivated his body heat. The once glowing warmth that marked him as a living, breathing creature disappeared, leaving him cold and unremarkable. Now, they won't know where I am, he thought. The heat sensors will fail. They'll think I'm gone. Then, he activated the camouflage. He hadn't done this in weeks, but the instinct was still there, buried deep in the recesses of his mind. His skin shifted. His scales, already dark and thick, rippled as if they were absorbing the surrounding environment, blending seamlessly with the stones and trees. He was invisible, not just to the naked eye, but to any sensors watching him. He was nothing but a shadow in the world. Satisfied with the change, he took a moment to assess the rest of the plan. The wall needed more convincing. He needed to make it look like he had pushed through it, or worse, that he had escaped. For that, he needed more than just scratches. He needed rocks, debris. Something scattered that would look like it came from inside the enclosure. Shredder scanned the area, his gaze narrowing as he spotted a small pile of rocks near the base of one of the trees. He padded over, still invisible, and began moving the stones one by one. He piled them in front of the wall, deliberately knocking some loose to tumble down the fake escape route. Each stone, each tiny adjustment was made with the precision of a seasoned strategist. He could almost picture the guards on the other side, their eyes darting back and forth as they looked for signs of movement. They'd see the rocks. The scratches. The signs that something had broken out. They wouldn't know what had happened, only that something had gone wrong. But it wasn't just rocks. He needed something bigger. That's when he noticed the tree. It was a low-hanging, thick branch, strong enough to be twisted to his advantage. He grabbed it with his powerful jaws and yanked it loose, the bark snapping with an audible crack. He tossed it across the ground in front of the wall, letting it sit there perfectly placed to give the illusion that something had used it to climb over the barrier. He was getting there. The final touch was simple. He needed to create enough distance from the wall to make it look like the creature had run into the woods, disappearing without a trace. With careful movements, he shuffled backward, retreating into the shadows of the trees, hidden beneath the canopy where he could observe unnoticed. It's done. He stood still in the darkness, watching through the thick foliage. He felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. His heart pounded, but the thrill of his cleverness kept it steady. Every movement was calculated. Every step was part of the performance. They would come soon, those who watched him. They would see the chaos, the signs of his escape, and they would scramble. They would panic. But not him. He had a plan. He had a chance. And now, he was free to watch. Chapter 6: The Tracker. Shredder crouched low in the shadows of the trees, his large body completely hidden beneath the thick foliage. His senses were heightened, every movement, every sound, amplified in the silence of the jungle. The weight of his plan rested heavily on his mind, but there was still one thing that nagged at him: the tracker. He couldn't afford to be tracked. In the movie, the Indominus Rex had a tracker embedded beneath its skin, a method of control that could pinpoint its location at any moment. It was a foolproof system in a world where power over nature was prized above all else. But that wouldn't work for him. He was no mindless beast, not anymore. He was more than the creature they thought they contained. With the subtlety of a true predator, Shredder reached down to his side, feeling for the small device embedded in his flesh. He could feel its cold, metallic surface just beneath the skin, a reminder of the control they thought they had over him. A surge of anger built up inside him. It had to go. He focused, then, with a swift motion, he used his claws to rip it out. The pain was sharp, but it was brief. A moment later, the tracker was in his grip. He looked at it, studying its intricate design. But there was no time for hesitation. He couldn't afford to be found. With a swift motion, he tossed the tracker over the wall, watching as it sailed through the air before disappearing into the jungle beyond. It was gone. No one would find him now. He was free to move, to plan. He took a deep breath, settling his thoughts before he looked around. He needed a place to rest, somewhere safe, but also somewhere with a view. Somewhere he could see everything without being seen. His eyes locked onto a tall tree nearby, its branches thick and sturdy. It would provide a perfect vantage point, as well as a place to rest while he formulated his next move. His heavy footsteps were silent as he approached the tree, his camouflage still active, blending him seamlessly with the environment. He scaled the trunk with ease, finding a large, thick branch to settle on. Once he was perched comfortably, hidden in the thick canopy, he let out a slow, deep exhale. For the first time since his awakening, he felt something resembling peace. It wasn't the kind of peace a man might feel after a hard day's work, nor the kind that came with comfort. No, this was the peace of a predator, a creature of the wild that had successfully slipped through the net of human control. He could hear the distant sound of the guards, their voices fading as they searched in vain. They wouldn't find him. He had outsmarted them for now. Switch to POV, Simon Masrani. The helicopter's blades whirred as it descended, touching down smoothly on the helipad. Simon Masrani, the new owner of Jurassic World, stepped out, the wind tousling his hair as he adjusted his jacket. His eyes scanned the park, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The island was beautiful, as it always had been, but there was a heaviness in the air today. Something lingered, a sense of something broken. He had been briefed on the basics, of course. He had done his research. But now, as he stood here, seeing the vast expanse of the park, he felt the weight of responsibility settle in. This wasn't just a theme park. This was a living, breathing creation, a giant experiment that had gone far beyond his expectations. A man in a suit approached him with a clipboard, and Simon extended his hand. "Simon Masrani," he said with a warm smile. "Henry Wu," the man replied, shaking Simon's hand firmly. "I'm the chief geneticist here at Jurassic World. I trust you had a smooth flight." "Smooth enough," Simon replied, offering a small smile. "I've read through the reports, but there's nothing like seeing it all firsthand. How are things running?" Wu cleared his throat, his eyes flickering with a slight unease. "The park is functioning as expected. All attractions are operational, though there are certain concerns about some of the more recent additions." "Recent additions?" Simon asked, raising an eyebrow. He had heard rumors, of course, but he needed specifics. "One in particular," Wu continued, his voice dropping slightly. "The Indominus Rex." Simon's eyes narrowed. He had heard whispers about the creature, but he hadn't expected it to be the subject of concern. "Indominus Rex? What exactly is it?" Wu took a deep breath. "It's a genetically engineered hybrid designed to be the ultimate predator. Stronger, faster, smarter than anything we've ever seen. But she's unpredictable. Unpredictable? Simon repeated, now genuinely intrigued. What do you mean by that? Wu glanced around as if making sure no one else could hear. She's been raised in isolation. Her socialization is non-existent. The other dinosaurs are kept away from her, and she's been bred to be aggressive. We've kept her in a secure facility, but there are growing concerns about her behavior. Simon felt a chill run down his spine. And she's safe in there, right? For now, Wu said with a grimace. But the moment she breaks free, we're looking at a major problem. Simon's gaze shifted toward the distant facility. Somewhere out there, in the heart of the park, the Indominus Rex was waiting. He didn't know whether to be impressed or terrified, but one thing was for sure: Jurassic World had taken a dangerous step into the unknown. And it was his job to ensure that the world didn't learn just how dangerous it was. What's her history? Simon asked, his voice steady. Has she been tested on anything? Wu hesitated before answering, clearly uneasy. She had a sibling when she was younger. They were raised together, but the Indominus Rex killed it. Ate it. After that, we made sure she stayed isolated. Simon felt his stomach tighten at the thought of the creature turning on its own kind. And you're still letting her roam free in a facility? Wu met his gaze, his expression unreadable. She's contained, but she's growing. And the longer she stays in isolation, the more unpredictable she becomes. Simon's mind raced as he considered the implications. This is a huge risk, Wu. The kind of risk that could make or break us. We need to figure out how to control her before it's too late. Wu nodded, his face grim. I couldn't agree more, Mr. Masrani. Simon turned and looked back at the distant facility where the Indominus Rex was held. Somewhere out there, she was waiting, her hunger growing, her isolation taking its toll. Simon didn't know what to expect next, but he knew one thing for certain: the future of Jurassic World was at a crossroads. And this creature would be the key to everything. Chapter 7: A Tour and a Meal. Simon Masrani followed closely behind Claire as she led him through the park, a sense of excitement tempered with a lingering unease hanging in the air. The path they took wound through lush greenery, and the sounds of the island birds calling, distant roars filled the air. But Simon's mind was elsewhere, wrapped up in thoughts of the Indominus Rex and the strange conversation he'd had with Dr. Wu. He was trying to adjust to the enormity of it all, but one thing was clear: Jurassic World was a world on the edge of something dangerous. And it had to be handled carefully. Claire glanced over her shoulder at Simon, a tight smile on her lips. I'll show you around the viewing area for the Indominus Rex. I think you'll find it interesting. Simon raised an eyebrow. Interesting, or terrifying? She chuckled lightly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. It's definitely more on the terrifying side. But we've made sure the viewing is safe. For now. They reached a large glass observation deck, where visitors could look down into the enclosure of the Indominus Rex. Simon was immediately struck by the size of the creature's home. The glass panels stretched across a vast space, giving a panoramic view of the dinosaur's territory. Despite its beauty, there was a palpable sense of foreboding in the air. The space felt too small for a creature of the Indominus's size. As Claire explained the safety measures, everything from the reinforced glass to the remote-controlled systems keeping the creature within bounds, Simon remained focused on the massive shape moving in the shadows of the enclosure. Even though he couldn't see it clearly yet, the sheer presence of the creature made his skin crawl. Will it scare the kids? Simon asked, his voice laced with a knowing curiosity. Claire hesitated for a moment before responding, her gaze fixed on the dark shape just beyond the glass. It's designed to be an attraction, but it will probably scare the parents more than the kids. The children think it's cool, but the parents, they know better. Simon chuckled darkly. It'll give the parents nightmares for sure. But it's all part of the spectacle, isn't it? Exactly, Claire said, her tone shifting to something more businesslike. We're in the business of pushing boundaries. There's no turning back now. They both stood there in silence for a while, observing the creature's movements from a distance. Simon could feel a rising tension in his chest. The more he watched the Indominus Rex, the more he could see the layers of danger surrounding her, an intelligence that hadn't been anticipated, a strength that couldn't be fully measured. She was a marvel of genetic engineering, but Simon was starting to wonder if they'd created something they couldn't control. As the minutes passed, Simon looked at Claire. You're sure she's contained, right? She nodded. For now. But I wouldn't underestimate her. The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed. Claire turned to leave, but Simon lingered for a moment longer, his gaze fixed on the dark shape of the Indominus Rex. Switch to POV, Indominus Rex, Shredder. Shredder, now fully aware of the creature's memories that resided in his mind, stayed hidden in the thick underbrush. His body was still, every sense stretched taut as he remained motionless, waiting for the right moment to move. The glass had been thick and reinforced, and the humans had clearly underestimated his ability to stay out of sight. They hadn't even noticed his claws yet. He shifted his weight slightly, his massive body rippling with the movement. His claws, sharp and dangerous, scraped against the soft earth, leaving behind small marks that no one had seen yet. That bothered him a little. How had they missed something so obvious? The claws were an essential part of his form, and the humans had clearly overlooked it. They had underestimated him, and that could prove to be a deadly mistake. But he would deal with that later. Right now, he had to focus on something else. The sound of a crane in the distance reached his ears. He tensed, his keen senses immediately identifying the cargo it was carrying, a large, fresh piece of meat. His stomach growled, a primal hunger that hadn't been satisfied in what felt like an eternity. He watched the crane carefully, waiting for it to get closer to the enclosure. The meat was lifted into the air, and Shredder didn't hesitate. He moved quickly, his massive body springing into action, silently and efficiently. The humans above were too distracted by their own concerns, too busy with their systems and operations to notice the predator below. Shredder leapt to the edge of the enclosure, his powerful jaws snapping around the piece of meat as it was lowered toward him. He yanked the carcass down from the crane, his teeth sinking into it with ferocity. The taste of fresh meat hit him almost immediately, and for a moment, he was overwhelmed by the satisfaction. He tore into it, his teeth rending the flesh with brutal precision. It wasn't the same as hunting, but for now, it would have to do. As he gnawed on the meat, his thoughts lingered on the humans, on the strange sensation of being both the creature and the man who had once been. But he couldn't afford to dwell on that. Not now. He needed to stay focused. The smell of the meat filled his nostrils as he finished off the first chunk, his hunger momentarily sated. He looked up, glancing around the enclosure. The humans were still a good distance away, their attention drawn elsewhere. He would have time. Time to plan his next move. But for now, there was only the meat, the satisfaction of the moment, and the feeling of his power growing stronger with every bite. Chapter 9, Breaking Point. Time had a way of losing meaning when you were isolated. The days blended into each other, one long, endless stretch of monotony. Shredder, no longer the man he once was, now a creature trapped in a body that was too big for his mind, couldn't pinpoint exactly when the shift happened. All he knew was that the passage of time had become an insidious force, slowly eroding his sanity, one passing hour at a time. He had stopped counting the days. The sun rose and set, though he couldn't see the horizon from his enclosure. The lack of change had pushed him to the brink of madness. His mind, once sharp and calculating, had begun to fray at the edges, his thoughts becoming jumbled and fragmented. Even now, as he paced the same small stretch of his prison, his massive claws scraping against the hardened earth, he could feel his grip on reality slipping further. How long has it been? A week? A month? Longer? It didn't matter. It was all the same. Shredder's instincts, honed over a lifetime of survival, now seemed like a distant memory. In his human form, he had known how to think, how to plan, how to control. But this monstrous body, this vast, alien form was more than just a shell. It was a cage, and he was its prisoner. The beast that inhabited him had no need for logic or strategy, it was driven by hunger, by instincts that surged to the surface when it least expected. And those instincts were beginning to consume him. The thought of escape, once a clear and resolute goal, was starting to feel distant. How could he escape when he had no way of understanding his surroundings? No way to communicate? The Indominus Rex's memories, scattered and fragmented as they were, told him that she had tried to interact with the humans, tried to make contact, to communicate, but had failed every time. And now, he was reliving her loneliness. His mind often wandered back to that, the loneliness, the isolation. It clawed at him, gnawed at the edges of his sanity. He had once been a man, surrounded by people, surrounded by a world that made sense. Now, there was nothing. Just an empty cage and the occasional meal delivered by the humans who thought they controlled him. It's not enough, none of it is enough. Shredder let out a low, guttural growl. His body was restless, too large for the small space he was confined to. He could feel the walls closing in on him, pressing in from every side. The enclosure had been built for a creature of his size, but now, in the grip of his unraveling mind, it felt suffocating. Why does it feel so small? He swiped a clawed hand at the walls of the enclosure, leaving deep gashes in the concrete. His muscles rippled with the effort, his teeth grinding together in frustration. The cage was too small for a predator like him. Too small for a beast that should have been ruling the wild, not stuck behind glass, observed like some kind of exhibit. The memories of the Indominus Rex were clearer now, sharper than they had been before. The creature had killed her own sister, her sibling, a fact that still haunted Shredder. He couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal that came with that memory, even though he knew it had been necessary for survival. In the end, the Indominus Rex had been forced to do what she had to, just as he was now forced to endure the crushing weight of isolation. But what was the point of all this? Why had he been put here? Why was he trapped in a cage, with no purpose, no drive? The raw power of the Indominus Rex was wasted on him. The hunger that twisted inside him wasn't the hunger of a predator, it was the hunger of someone losing their mind. Shredder let out a roar, his voice reverberating through the enclosure, a primal sound of frustration and rage. He slammed his massive claws against the glass, making the structure tremble. But the humans were too far away to notice, too far away to hear. This isn't me, this isn't who I am. I'm not this beast. The thought only drove him further into madness. He wasn't sure if the memories he had, his human memories, were his own anymore. They were starting to feel like someone else's. The more time he spent in the body of the Indominus Rex, the less he remembered of who he had been. The walls of his mind were starting to break down, the distance between who he had been and who he was now growing ever wider. In the stillness of the enclosure, Shredder closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe deeply, trying to center himself, trying to hold on to some shred of sanity. But it was no use. His mind had become a tangle of disjointed thoughts and raw emotion. Desperation, anger, and loneliness twisted together in a grotesque knot inside him. The only thing that was real, the only thing he had left to hold on to, was the anger. And that anger was growing, intensifying, feeding off the isolation. He didn't know how much longer he could endure it. Switch to POV, Claire Deering. As Claire stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the Indominus Rex move sluggishly through her enclosure, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in her stomach. The creature shredder, she reminded herself, was becoming more unpredictable. More dangerous. She glanced over her shoulder, looking at the team of researchers who were monitoring the creature's behavior. Anything new on her movements today? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Same as usual, one of the techs responded, though his voice was strained. She's pacing. Nothing out of the ordinary. Claire frowned. It wasn't that simple. There was something about the way the Indominus moved today, an edge to her movements that suggested she was agitated. Restless. She had seen this behavior before, and it worried her. It wasn't just a matter of hunger anymore. There was something deeper at play here. I don't like this, she murmured to herself, but it was too late to change anything now. The park was too big, too expansive, and the risks were growing by the day. As the team continued their work, Claire took one last look at the Indominus, feeling a growing sense of dread. How long could they keep her contained before she snapped? Chapter 11: The Investigation. Claire Deering stood at the observation deck, her gaze fixed on the blank expanse of the Indominus Rex's enclosure. The massive cage was eerily quiet, the only movement coming from the distant rustling of trees outside the perimeter. The heavy silence was unnerving. Claire had been monitoring the creature's behavior for days now, and each day it seemed to become more unpredictable. But today, the absence of movement from within the cage was far more unsettling than any erratic pacing or loud growls. Something was wrong. She knew she couldn't ignore it any longer. She needed to assess the situation before it escalated. Her fingers tightened around the railing as she stared at the empty space. The sense of unease gnawed at her. What had caused this? Where was the Indominus? Her thoughts were interrupted by the vibration of her phone. It was Owen Grady. Claire, Owen's voice came through immediately, his tone steady but with an undercurrent of concern. What's going on? You sounded urgent. I need you to come to the enclosure. Something's off, Claire replied, the tension clear in her voice. Now. I'm on my way, Owen responded, the line going quiet as he hung up. Claire didn't waste any time. She walked over to the control panel and checked the status of the cameras, only to find the feeds were still down. This wasn't a technical glitch, the cameras had been deliberately disabled, as if the Indominus had known exactly where to strike to prevent being watched. Her pulse quickened, and her mind raced. This wasn't just a behavioral issue, this was strategic. The creature was getting more intelligent, more capable of taking control. Minutes later, Owen arrived, walking briskly toward her. His boots crunched on the gravel as he approached the observation deck, and Claire immediately gestured for him to join her. What's going on? Owen asked, glancing at the large, empty enclosure. I don't know, Claire replied, her voice tense. It's not just the pacing and aggression we've been seeing lately, it's like she's gone missing. Owen looked at the massive enclosure again, his brow furrowing. He knew that the Indominus Rex was an intelligent animal, capable of far more than anyone had anticipated. But this felt wrong. What's the latest? Owen asked. Any sign of her? Claire shook her head, her eyes scanning the empty space before them. Nothing. But the signs are all there. The claw marks on the walls, the damage to the structure, something happened. We just don't know what. Claw marks? Owen asked, a hint of concern slipping into his voice. Where? Claire led him to the edge of the observation deck, pointing to the large, deep gouges in the reinforced glass. She's been trying to get out. I think she's agitated. And she's not showing herself now. It's like she knows we're watching. Owen's gaze shifted to the gouges. He studied them for a moment before turning to Claire, his expression serious. You've been monitoring her behavior for a while. What's changed? Claire hesitated, choosing her words carefully. She's not acting like a typical animal. There's a level of intelligence there that wasn't supposed to exist. I'm worried she's adapting faster than we can handle. Owen crossed his arms over his chest, considering this for a moment. I've worked with dangerous animals, Claire, but this is something else. We need to take a closer look. We need to figure out where she is and why she's hiding. I agree, Claire said, a grim expression crossing her face. That's why I called you here. I need you to go in. You're the best. We've got to figure out what's happening. Owen gave her a pointed look. You know that's not a good idea. We don't know where she is, and there's no way of knowing if she's dangerous. Last time I checked, we weren't doing any live animal handling with her yet. I understand, but I don't have any other options, Claire said, frustration creeping into her voice. We've been blind to her true capabilities. If we don't act now, we might be too late. Owen shook his head, clearly uncomfortable. All right. But I'm not doing this alone. Claire nodded. I'll send a maintenance worker and a security guard with you. It's not ideal, but it's better than going in completely blind. After a moment of silence, Owen relented. Fine. But we're going in carefully. This isn't just a routine check anymore. Claire turned to the control panel and issued a quick command to have the security team prepped. As Owen walked away to gather his gear, Claire's mind raced with possibilities. She hoped she wasn't making a mistake by letting him go in. The last thing they needed was for the Indominus Rex to prove just how dangerous she truly was. Switch to POV, Shredder, Indominus Rex. Inside the shadows of the enclosure, Shredder, still bound in the monstrous form of the Indominus Rex, lay in wait. He had been growing increasingly restless. For days, the isolation, the confinement, and the lack of stimulation were starting to wear on him. Every moment spent in this massive cage felt like an eternity, and it was only a matter of time before he cracked. But today, something felt different. The humans were too busy trying to control the situation, unaware of the change in his behavior. They didn't realize that he was more than just an animal, more than just a killer. The Indominus Rex wasn't just a genetic experiment. It was a tool, a vessel, and he was starting to regain control. He could feel the vibrations of their footsteps approaching. The humans. They thought they had him contained. They thought they could predict him. But they were wrong. They had underestimated the sheer willpower of what they had created. The Indominus Rex had a mind of its own. And so did he. Chapter 12: The Escape. The massive security gate creaked open with a mechanical groan, flooding the entrance corridor with a sterile light. Owen Grady stepped forward, one hand resting near the tranquilizer pistol on his hip, his expression a mix of cautious curiosity and professional annoyance. Behind him walked a maintenance worker with a tablet pressed against his chest and a visibly nervous security guard, rifle tight in his grip. Claire had told him it was a maintenance check. Nothing serious. Routine. But Owen knew better. He had seen the claw marks. Deep gouges along the interior wall of the enclosure. Something didn't add up. Still, there was no sign of the dinosaur. No sound, no movement. And that's exactly why they were there, to make sure. "Where's the animal?" the guard asked, whispering like they were in a horror movie. Claire's voice had been clear earlier, "It's not in the visual range. The heat sensors aren't picking it up. It might be hiding somewhere in the enclosure." She said it with such corporate calm, like it was just a glitch in the system. Owen rolled his eyes. Right. Hiding. The 20-foot-long killing machine is just playing hide and seek. He stepped through the inner gate. The environment was thick with foliage, artificial yet overgrown in places. Trees lined the rocky dirt path, and visibility was poor beyond 20 feet. The trees were too tall. The ferns too dense. Owen scanned the area again. Still no movement. Meanwhile, Shredder crouched silently behind a thick wall of foliage just a few yards away. He was crouched low, his massive form shrouded by active camouflage, his thermal signature dampened into nothing. They hadn't seen him. They hadn't heard him. He'd planned every detail to make them believe he was gone. I have to make this count, he thought. Just wait for the moment. Let them get comfortable. His mind was still sharp, though barely. The days of isolation had gnawed at the edges of his sanity. Hunger. Boredom. Loneliness. But this was the moment he had been waiting for. His muscles were tensed, ready. Inside, Owen glanced back at the security guard. Stay close. If you see anything, don't panic. Just radio it in. The guard nodded, shifting nervously as he followed Owen a few steps in. Then it happened. From the dense brush behind them, a deafening, guttural roar exploded through the enclosure. The ground seemed to shake beneath their feet. Birds scattered. Trees swayed from the shockwave of sound. The security guard froze. Then he panicked. He turned to the control panel by the gate and slammed his hand against the emergency open button. It's here. It's here. Open the gate. No. Wait. Owen shouted, but it was too late. The doors groaned open. Shredder didn't hesitate. With a roar that ripped through the jungle like thunder, he surged from the trees. Leaves tore from their branches as the massive body of the Indominus Rex barreled forward. The maintenance worker screamed. The security guard dove through the gate. Owen turned, eyes wide, as the pale, camouflaged blur of death charged past them. He stumbled back, mouth open in shock. What the hell? Shredder didn't even pause. He ran straight through the gate, smashing a corner of the metal frame as he pushed into the open. The forest beyond beckoned, and he vanished into it within seconds, disappearing like a ghost into the thick jungle. Silence followed, broken only by the echo of branches snapping in the distance. Owen stood frozen, hand on his weapon, breath ragged. That was the Indominus Rex, he said slowly. Behind him, the maintenance worker collapsed to his knees, muttering a prayer. The security guard shouted into his radio, "It's out! It's out! The Indominus is loose! Sound the alarm!" But it was too late. Shredder was already gone. Chapter 13 Freedom. I crash through the trees like a storm finally unleashed. Branches snap against my hide, birds explode from the canopy above me, shrieking as they flee. The air smells different here, wild, untouched, free. Every thunderous step I take shakes the earth beneath me, but I don't stop. I don't slow down. I just keep running. I'm out. I'm finally out. The thought loops in my head over and over like a chant, like a song I never thought I'd hear again. I made it. I fooled them. I tricked their sensors, their guards, their arrogance. I'm not some dumb beast in a cage, I'm me. I'm still me. God, it feels good to breathe real air. Not that recycled crap they pumped into the enclosure. This is forest. Dirt. Life. Space to move. Space to run. Space to just exist. I barrel through a thick patch of underbrush and come to a slow stop, chest heaving, nostrils flaring. My tail sways behind me, cutting through low branches like a wrecking ball. I lift my head and glance up. Can't see the sky clearly through the trees, but just the idea of sky is enough. I let out a low growl, no, not a growl. A laugh. I'm laughing in my head, but it comes out as a soft, satisfied rumble. Maybe the first I've made that wasn't born from boredom or frustration. I did it. I'm out. But the rush fades a little too quickly, like a fire that catches and then dies just as fast. I'm still breathing heavy, but now there's an edge to it. My thoughts slow down just enough for fear to creep in uninvited, unwelcome. They're gonna come for me, I whisper to myself in my mind. I escaped. I outsmarted them. And now they'll hunt me. Of course they will. They won't let a multi-million-dollar genetic freak just walk off into the woods. I'm too dangerous. Too valuable. Too unpredictable. They'll send drones. Choppers. Guns. Maybe even something worse. I know how these people think. I used to be human too, remember? And that's what scares me most. I know what they'll do because I've seen what we're capable of. I dig my claws into the earth and lean against a tree for a moment, steadying myself. My heart or whatever this thing has pounds like a war drum. I feel the throb of blood in my temple even if I don't really have temples anymore. They're coming. Maybe not now. Maybe not tonight. But they will come. I should keep moving. That's the smart thing to do. Get as far away from the facility as I can before the manhunt begins. But I don't move. Instead, I sit. Slowly. Carefully. I lower this massive body onto the soft earth and rest my weight against a fallen tree, letting the exhaustion wash over me. My tail curls around my side, and I exhale through my nose with a soft huff that sends a few birds scattering again. Because despite the fear, despite the storm that's sure to come, I'm free. For the first time since waking up in that cage, I'm not staring at the same walls, not pacing the same 50 feet of artificial jungle. I have space. I have silence. I have the forest. Let tomorrow come. Let them hunt me. Let them bring their guns and choppers and teams of shouting men who think they can control what they don't understand. That's tomorrow's problem. Tonight. I'm free. I close my eyes not to sleep, not yet. Just to be still. Just to feel the earth beneath me, not concrete. Just to listen to something that isn't machinery or distant human voices. The rustle of wind. The chirp of insects. The distant call of some other dinosaur. The world, it feels real again. You're not broken, I whisper to myself. You're just something new. And finally, for just a moment, I feel like something more than a monster. Chapter 14 Instinct. Morning. Or at least I think it is. Hard to tell with the dense canopy above me. The sky's just a pale smudge between the trees, but the air's changed lighter, warmer. The forest is waking up. So am I. My stomach growls loud enough to startle a squirrel out of a nearby bush. It scurries up a tree, chittering like it thinks it's safe up there. I could probably catch it. One good leap and... No. That wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't feel like a meal. I need meat. Real meat. Big. Bleeding. Struggling. Something I can tear into. Something that reminds me why I was made the way I am. I rise slowly from the tree I'd curled against, bones cracking with the weight of this monstrous body. The cool dirt falls off my back in clumps as I stretch my neck side to side. Everything aches, but in that good, primal way. The kind of ache that says, go. Hunt. Kill. And God, do I want to? I sniff the air. One breath, then another, pulling in scents I don't recognize and sorting through them like cards in a deck. Rodents. Birds. Nothing worth my time. Then. There. Faint. Musky. Heavier. 4 legs. Hooves. Probably some kind of herbivore. I don't waste a second. I crouch low and start moving. The ground is soft with moss and leaf mulch, muffling the sound of my steps. My body's massive, but I know how to move. Quiet. Deadly. The way she moved, the way I move now. She wasn't just built to kill. She was built to hunt. I feel it in my bones, like muscle memory I never earned. It guides me, leads me forward through the forest like I've always belonged here. 20 minutes in, I spot it. A dinosaur, maybe 10 feet tall, grazing near a small clearing. Something simple: skinny neck, stubby tail, not much muscle. Looks like a walking lunch. It has no idea I'm here. I take my time. Circle around. Every step calculated. The wind's in my favor, the noise of the jungle covers me. Closer. Closer. Then I pounce. It doesn't even have time to scream. I crash down with both front claws, pinning it to the earth. Its body thrashes for a second, legs kicking in a hopeless rhythm, before my jaws close around its neck. One snap. Silence. Blood fills my mouth. It's messy. It's brutal. It's real. And it's delicious. The warmth, the weight, the taste, it's so much more than I imagined. The meals they gave me in the cage weren't food. They were scraps. This is what I was made to eat. I devour it. Bones crunch under my teeth. Flesh tears in long strings. I don't stop until there's almost nothing left, not even a rib to gnaw on. Afterward, I drag the remains off into a thicket and lick the blood from my claws. The satisfaction doesn't last long. Hunger's sated, but exhaustion creeps in right behind it. I need shelter. Not just a hiding spot, something solid. Something mine. A place to rest, to disappear when they start searching. Something primal tugs at me, some echo of the Indominus buried under my own thoughts. Find a den. I start walking again, slower now, my belly full and head low. I climb a slope, cross a muddy ravine, and follow the rise of stone outcroppings until I see it, a dark crack in a hillside, half hidden by ferns and tangled vines. A cave. Small, but deep. Looks untouched. I step inside cautiously. The stone is cool underfoot. The light fades with each step until I can barely see. I sniff no recent scent trails. No bones. No animals. It's empty. It's perfect. I curl up near the back, coiling my tail along the wall, tucking my head beneath the crook of my arm. My breathing slows. The darkness wraps around me like a blanket. It's not home. But it's the closest thing I've got. And for now, that's enough. Sleep takes me fast. Heavy. Dreamless. Maybe for the first time since waking up in this nightmare, I feel something close to peace. Chapter 15. Not quite alone. I wake up slow. The light slipping through the cave mouth is soft, golden afternoon, probably. A breeze carries in the smells of the forest, moss, distant water, and the faint metallic tang of blood, probably mine, from the scraps I tracked in yesterday. I stretch my limbs, letting my claws scrape gently against the stone. My back cracks. My mouth opens in a yawn that shakes the cave. I feel good. I feel alive. Not just breathing alive. The forest outside hums with energy. Birds call, bugs buzz, the wind whistles through the trees. I step out into the light, blinking a little as my eyes adjust. The canopy is thick, but beams of sunlight cut through here and there, shimmering across the jungle floor. I start to move, slow at first. No destination, just a need to move. To stretch out. To run. Then I do. I take off like a beast unchained. Each step slams into the ground with the weight of a freight train, shaking branches loose as I tear through underbrush and leap over fallen logs. The wind rushes across my body, whistling through my teeth. My heart pounds. For the first time since waking up in this body, I'm not thinking. I'm just doing. And it feels amazing. Eventually, I slow down. My chest heaves, lungs dragging in massive breaths. I come to a stop near a clearing, where I spot something moving. Small. Low to the ground. A tiny dinosaur maybe 2 feet long, bird-like, covered in mottled green feathers. It tilts its head and stares up at me. I blink. Something about it tugs at a memory. Not mine, hers. A buried instinct, a whisper in the back of my mind. The original Indominus could talk to raptors. She communicated. Turned them against their handlers. Used language, or something close to it. So I try. I crouch down, pressing my body low and tilt my head, mirroring its gesture. I open my mouth not to roar, but to chirp. A soft clicking sound bubbles up from my throat, awkward and uncertain. The little dinosaur stares. Blinks. Then squeaks and bolts for the trees. I grunt, disappointed. Not a raptor. Still, it looked kind of tasty. My tongue flicks out, unbidden. My stomach growls not from hunger, but curiosity. I let instinct take over. One swift pounce and my jaws snap shut over the bush where it vanished. A short squeal, then silence. It was tasty. Like a chicken nugget, if chicken nuggets ran for their lives and had feathers. I swallow the tiny creature in 2 bites and continue on, weaving through trees until I hear it the soft burble of water. I follow the sound and find a lake. Not huge, but wide and still, its surface glittering under the afternoon sun. Dragonflies skim across it. Thick reeds cluster around the edges, and across the far side, I see them dinosaurs. Dozens of them. Mostly herbivores. Peaceful grazers. Long necks and duckbills, slow and stupid. A whole buffet of prey, all standing around like it's Sunday brunch. I step to the water's edge and lower my head to drink. Cool, fresh. It rolls down my throat in huge gulps, washing away the lingering iron taste from earlier. The herd on the other side looks up. One of them lets out a low, nervous bellow. I don't move. They're watching me, frozen in fear. They expect me to charge. To chase. To hunt. But I don't. I just drink. And when I'm done, I turn around and walk back into the trees. Not because I'm full. Not because I'm merciful. I just don't feel like it. Maybe it's the human in me. Maybe it's her memories. Maybe I just wanted water, not carnage. Maybe I just don't want to kill unless I have to. I find my way back to the cave before the sun sets. Curl up again. Rest my head on my claws. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. But for now, I'm still free. And that's enough. Chapter 16 Visitors. The morning hunt went well. Big, scaly thing. Horns. Fast, but not fast enough. I brought it down with a leap, pinned it, crushed its throat. Efficient. Clean. Satisfying. I eat my fill. The rest I bury near the cave. Territorial instinct more than anything. Not like anything else around here would dare take what's mine. Once I'm full, I decide to scout. This forest might be home now, but it's still unfamiliar. I move through it like a ghost, quiet, cautious, alert. I'm not stupid. I know they'll be looking for me. And I don't want to get tranquilized and dragged back to that tiny cage. So I stay sharp. The wind shifts. Something strange on it. Not prey. Not dinosaur. Human. I freeze. Voices. I drop flat against the underbrush, blending in with the trees. I edge closer, slow and silent. And there they are, 3 figures in dark gear. Human. No doubt. Long rifles. Earpieces. Hunters. I tense. But then I back off. Not now. I slip away before they notice me. Circle around. Keep moving. That's when I find it. A fence. Tall. Thick metal. But broken in one spot. Bent and warped probably from a fallen tree or a storm. Whatever caused it, there's a gap. I slip through. The air smells different here. Less wild. More controlled. This is closer to the park. I tread carefully, still cloaked in camouflage, until I hear something rolling. Something weird. A low humming sound, mechanical. My eyes lock on the source. A glass ball. It glides over the field, surrounded by tall ferns and lazily grazing dinosaurs. Inside, two boys. Teenagers. They're laughing. Oblivious. I tilt my head. Then bare my teeth. This is a part of me that I hadn't felt before. A thrill. Not hunger, not exactly. Just a pulse of excitement. A new variable. I flicker into visibility. They see me. Screams. The sphere jerks and speeds away. I chase. I roar a full, guttural, echoing snarl that rattles the trees. I clamp my jaws onto the glass shell, shake it like a toy. My teeth scrape, but it's tough. Reinforced. Still, I leave a mark. They bolt. The sphere rockets away, swerving wildly. I chase again. But after a minute, I lose interest. It's not food. It's not a threat. It's just noise. I turn around and disappear back into the trees, heading home. Back to my cave. Back to silence. POV shift, Zack. This is so boring, I muttered, slumping back in the seat. The gyrosphere glided across the valley floor, weaving around the long-necked sauropods like a golf cart on a safari. Everything was so tame. They're dinosaurs, Zack, my younger brother, Gray, said, pressing his face to the glass. Actual dinosaurs. And you're bored? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I just thought there'd be more action, you know? T-Rex roaring, something cool. Gray shook his head, unimpressed with my lack of wonder. The control stick hummed in my hand as I guided the sphere around a hill and into a patch of thicker forest. Hey, we're not supposed to go off the main trail, Gray warned. It's fine, I said. Nobody's watching. And that's when we saw it. A shape. Massive. Lurking behind the trees. We froze. The gyrosphere slowed. Gray gasped. Is that? The creature stepped into full view. It was like a T-Rex but bulkier, wider, and something about it felt wrong. Like it was thinking. Watching. Waiting. I met its eyes through the glass. Then it roared. The gyrosphere's interface lit up with warnings, and the sphere spun wildly as I yanked the control stick. It lunged its jaws crashing against the glass. Gray screamed. I gritted my teeth and gunned it forward, swerving through trees as fast as the machine would go. The thing chased us, loud and fast, shaking the ground with each step. We're gonna die! Gray yelled. No, we're not! I shouted, scanning for anything to slow it down. Then I saw the edge. A cliff. We have to jump! I yelled. What? Trust me. The gyrosphere launched off the edge, mid-scream. Time slowed. We crashed into the pond below with a titanic splash, the water rushing in our ears. I felt the world spin, bubble, churn. Cold everywhere. But we were alive. Somehow. We swam up, gasping, coughing. The white dinosaur, whatever it was, had vanished. But it had seen us. And it had wanted us. Chapter 17 Wanderer. First-person shredder, Indominus Rex. I walk. Not for food. Not to kill. Just, to walk. The forest stretches in every direction, an endless green web of trees, vines, and leaves rustling under the wind. It's the first time in what feels like a lifetime I can just move without limits. No steel, no shock walls, no eyes watching me through reinforced glass. My claws crunch into damp earth as I move. Small creatures dart away at the tremor of my steps, little two-legged dinosaurs, birds with teeth, even a group of Dryosaurus. I watch them go, not with hunger, but with something I can't quite name. Curiosity? Maybe even envy. They were born here. I was made. They were meant to belong. I wasn't meant to be. I slow as I reach a hill overlooking a wide, open glade. Herds of long-necked dinosaurs, the peaceful kind, graze without care. I crouch low in the shade. My camouflage flickers, not because I'm hiding but because it feels natural now. Like breathing. I don't attack. I don't charge. I just watch. I'm not here to feed. I'm not here to kill. I'm here because I can be. POV shift Owen Grady. This doesn't make any sense. Owen crouched beside the carcass of a young ankylosaur, its shell cracked open like a dropped tortoise. Claire stood behind him, arms crossed, not looking at the body. There are no signs of dragging, Owen said, voice low. No missing chunks of meat. Nothing eaten. So it is hunting for sport, Claire said, her voice tight. Owen shook his head. No. If it was for sport, there'd be more. More damage. More chaos. This looks almost methodical. One strike. Clean. Claire frowned. Then why kill at all? Territory? Instinct? Fear? He stood up, brushing his hands off. Whatever this thing is doing, it's not just mindless rage. It's not slaughtering everything. It's choosing. Claire looked away. It shouldn't be able to choose. That's the problem, Owen said quietly. It can. One of the guards called out from the trees. Another body had been found. Owen's jaw clenched. This thing isn't playing games, he muttered. It's surviving. POV shift shredder. The water feels good. Cool. Heavy. Clean. I sink under, letting the pressure hold me down, curling against the lake floor like a massive, pale shadow. Little fish dart past. One nips at my leg. I let it. This is what life feels like. Not rage. Not violence. Just breath. Water. Silence. When I rise, my eyes catch the sky. A single bird glides overhead. I wonder what I look like from up there. A monster? A mistake? Maybe. Maybe not. But here, under this sky, I don't care. Let the humans worry. Let them chase ghosts and claw marks. Let them guess what I am. I don't even know yet. Chapter 18 Hide and Seek. POV Zach. Keep your head down. I whisper sharply. My brother's soaked shoes squish with every step as we sneak into the ruined garage-like structure, some kind of maintenance shed for the gyrospheres. Metal beams are rusted, and old equipment lies strewn across the floor like a forgotten diorama of safety manuals and spare parts. There's a broken-down Jeep half covered in vines, its front windshield smashed open and frame tilted. We should keep moving, Gray says, shivering. His teeth chatter from the cold pond water still soaking through his clothes. No. We stay here until someone finds us, I reply, crouching behind the Jeep. Zach. I said stay down. He listens. He always listens. It makes it worse somehow. I peek through a gap in the metal siding. The forest is too quiet. Too still. My stomach knots. And then I feel it before I hear it. Thud. Thud. Each step is a rumble. Gray stiffens beside me, barely breathing. I don't say anything this time. Because we both know what it is. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. There they are again. The two humans. They smell like fear, wet cloth, and something else, maybe guilt? Or is that just the pond water? Either way, I see them ducking behind that crumpled metal thing. I slow my steps. My claws glide gently over the grass, silent as death. I lower my head slightly and move around the long side of the jeep. The wind shifts, brings me their scent again. So close. I pause. I don't want to kill them. Not yet. Instead, I crouch and peek over the metal, then quietly circle the vehicle like a predator in play. They move when I move. A little to the left. I can hear their breaths tight, shallow. They're trying to stay quiet. It's a game, I realize. They think they're smart. I move to the opposite side, deliberately slow, and I hear one of them let out a strangled whimper. I almost chuckle. Almost. There's something strangely fun about this. Not cruel, not savage. Just something I've never had before. Interaction. A chase without violence. They scramble to the other side again, boots slapping wet pavement, and I tilt my head. Not bad. They're clever. Then I hear something else. Voices. More humans. Too many. They're getting closer, moving through the trees. The metallic clatter of a radio, a barked command, the stomp of boots. Search team. Damn. I back off. I disappear into the foliage again, silent, blending in with the underbrush. Leaves brush against my sides as I press between trees, moving away from the shed, from the humans, from the noise. No point in being found now. Not when the game was just starting to get interesting. Chapter 19 The Trap. POV Claire. Claire paced back and forth inside the control room, eyes scanning the monitors. Sweat clung to her brow. The radio buzzed with activity as the team reported back, each new update more concerning than the last. Anything? Claire asked, her voice sharp. She had to keep her composure, but the tension was starting to break her. We've found tracks, the voice crackled through the radio. We've confirmed she was here, but she's gone now. Disappeared into the forest. Claire clenched her jaw. Damn it! How long ago? Less than an hour, the voice replied. We think she's still in the area. She ran a hand through her hair, frustration building. This wasn't just a containment issue. This was becoming something else. The Indominus wasn't just a problem, they were losing control. Keep the search up, Claire ordered, trying to sound calm. Stay in communication. Let me know the moment you spot her. Her eyes darted back to the screens. She could see the map of the island, the pin marking the area where they had last confirmed the Indominus's presence. But there was nothing now. An empty spot. She let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. Too many. The distant hum of the search teams carries through the forest, their voices floating on the air like an unseen storm. I move through the trees, keeping low, my heart racing. They'll find me. I know it. They're coming for me, too many of them. I need a way to hide. To protect myself. I can't just keep running. But maybe I don't need to hide. I slow, thoughts running in circles. Then, an idea comes to me. Simple. Effective. Not perfect, but it'll do. I shift my weight, taking careful steps, looking for materials. Trees. I'll use the trees. I move quickly, gathering thick branches, snapping them from their trunks. The leaves rustle softly as I place them in a rough square, stacking them in the middle of a clearing. I'm quick, no one will expect it. It doesn't need to be large, just sturdy enough to hold. With my claws, I start weaving smaller branches in between the larger ones, connecting them together like some primitive structure. The trap is simple but effective, a net, more or less. Heavy enough to hold something if it's too busy fighting for freedom to notice the trap in time. I lift the structure carefully, positioning it just right, then step back, watching it come together. A smile flickers on my lips. If anyone comes through here, they won't be leaving the same way. It won't stop them forever. But maybe, just maybe, it'll slow them down long enough for me to get away. I hide behind a tree, waiting. The sun is setting, and the coolness of the evening fills the air, bringing a brief relief to my overheated body. The trap is ready. Now, I just need to wait for the right moment. Chapter 20: The Capture. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I finish hiding the trap, carefully draping a pile of leaves and vines over it. The cool earth feels good under my claws as I pull a long, thick vine, tying it to a hidden spot near my hiding place. I crouch behind the dense cover of trees, my eyes trained on the clearing, watching for any sign of movement. The sun is slipping lower, the shadows growing long. The jungle around me feels alive with the sounds of distant creatures, but my focus is entirely on the trap. I know what's coming. It's only a matter of time. Then, I hear it. The faint crunch of footsteps on dry leaves. A rustle. And then the unmistakable sound of something heavy being stepped on. I hold my breath. A soldier's voice breaks the stillness. Step carefully, she could be anywhere. I keep my body perfectly still, muscles tense. They're getting closer, too close. I peer through the gap in the trees, watching the soldiers approach. The first man steps right into the clearing. Now. I yank the vine with a sharp, swift movement, and the trap springs to life. A sudden pull, and the soldier is yanked off his feet, yelping as the branches snap around his legs. The net tightens, and the rest of the team scrambles back in shock. They try to cut the vines, but they're caught helpless. From the shadows, I watch them struggle. The soldiers' frantic attempts to free themselves are amusing in their desperation. But this is just a part of the plan. I can't let them escape, not now. I step out from behind the trees, my massive form emerging from the underbrush. The clearing falls silent at the sight of me. I can feel their fear, their panic as they stare into my glowing eyes, but I don't stop. I move forward, my claws scraping the earth with each deliberate step. They're stuck. Trapped. But I don't want to play with them anymore. I don't need to. The trap did its job. I approach the soldiers, my jaws snapping in their direction as I reach out with one massive claw, sinking it deep into the leg of the closest one. His scream is muffled as I drag him back, severing his escape route. The others freeze, too scared to move. I watch them for a moment, then slowly back away, moving into the trees once again. If they survive, I murmur under my breath, my voice a low growl. They deserve it. I turn my attention back to the forest. It's not my problem anymore. The trap worked, and the soldiers? They're just another part of the game. With one last glance at the chaos I left behind, I disappear into the thick foliage, blending into the shadows. I can hear the frantic shouts as the soldiers try to pull themselves free, but I don't care. My escape is more important now. POV Soldier. The net pulls tight. I hit the ground hard, groaning in pain as the branches dig into my body. The others scream, but my mind is already clouded with fear. I try to cut the vines with my knife, but the ropes are thick, too strong for my blade to cut through. The air is thick with panic. Then, I hear it. A low rumble. The sound of something massive moving through the forest. It's coming closer, and it's coming fast. I look up, eyes wide, and there it is. The Indominus Rex. It steps out of the trees, towering over us, its massive form blocking out the sunlight. We can't move. We can't run. We're trapped. And the monster is staring right at us with those cold, glowing eyes. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I see them now, caught in my trap. They're struggling, screaming. And yet, they can't escape. Not from me. I tilt my head, observing them for a moment. Their fear is palpable, and it's all I need. They're not worth killing, no, not yet, but they'll remember this. I step forward, claws clicking against the rocks, and with a swift motion, I strike one of them down, hitting his legs with such force that he collapses, unable to stand. I don't let him move. The others are too far behind, and I don't care to make them my next target. I feel something shift inside me, something dark and cold. I leave them behind without a second thought. I watch them for a moment, but the feeling of satisfaction doesn't last long. If they survive, they deserve it. But it doesn't matter. Not to me. I turn away from the scene, disappearing once more into the forest. The game isn't over. It never is. But for now, I'm free. Chapter 21 Predator and Prey. POV Owen Grady. I paced outside the control center, Claire right behind me, her heels clacking against the concrete with more tension than usual. The air smelled like burnt metal and something wilder fear. Mine, maybe. She crossed her arms. Tell me what you saw. I stopped and turned to face her, my jaw clenched tight. Claire, this isn't just any dinosaur. She raised an eyebrow, impatient. What are you talking about? You said the paddock was empty. It was, I replied, voice low and urgent. It planned this. The scratches on the wall, the hidden heat signature, she planned it. She knew how we'd respond. That trap? That wasn't panic. That was strategy. Claire blinked at me, her confidence faltering for the first time. It's just an animal, Owen. A genetically modified animal. I shook my head. No. This isn't an animal. It's something else. Something smarter. You made a predator that thinks. That understands its environment. That manipulates it. She looked away, jaw tightening. I could tell she didn't want to hear it. But she had to. If we don't contain this thing fast, I added, you won't just have a few injuries on your hands. You'll have casualties. And chaos. POV Zach. My heart hadn't stopped racing since the Indominus nearly caught us. My clothes were still soaked from the pond, sticking to my skin like glue, and my shoes squelched as we ran up the hotel stairs. Gray was quiet, but I could tell he was just as scared as I was. Maybe more. We didn't speak. We just kept running. No jokes. No smart comments. Nothing but silence and the pounding of our feet on the metal stairs. As soon as we reached the room, I slammed the door shut and locked it. Then I pressed my back to it, breathing hard. What was that? Gray finally asked in a whisper. I don't know, I said. But it was looking at us. Like it knew what we were gonna do. Gray sat on the bed, shaking slightly. I stayed by the door, listening for any sound outside. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The forest welcomed me again, and I ran swift and silent between the trees, blood still fresh on my claws from the earlier attack. Wind brushed past my face, and for a moment, I felt alive. Free. Alone. Powerful. I slowed down when I saw a dark shape ahead. A cave. Maybe shelter, maybe food. I approached slowly, keeping low. The entrance was large, wider than the one I had slept in before. Inside, I could smell something. Heavy. Musky. Warm. A triceratops. It stood in the middle of the cave, its massive head turning toward me as soon as I entered. It grunted, the sound echoing off the stone walls. Its eyes locked on me, sharp and cautious. I moved to the side, circling slowly, watching it shift its stance. Its horns pointed forward. A warning. Then it charged. I leapt to the side, dodging just in time as it barreled past, kicking up dust and rocks. I lunged, jaw snapping toward its side, but it twisted with surprising agility, swinging its horns again. One caught my shoulder, sending a jolt of pain down my arm. I growled low, anger rising. It charged again, but this time I ducked low and rolled underneath its belly, latching onto its side with my claws. I sunk my teeth behind its neck, just above the shoulder. It bellowed in pain and thrashed, trying to throw me off. But I didn't let go. It slammed into a wall, jarring my grip, but I clawed deeper, teeth grinding against bone. Then it jerked its head again and this time tried to gore me, but I kicked off its body, dodging the blow. We circled each other again, both bleeding, both breathing hard. Then I lunged again low, fast, claws raking across its face to blind it. It roared, stumbling, and I took the opening. I sank my teeth into its neck again, this time deeper, and held. Its legs buckled. I bit harder. And then, it stopped moving. I stood over the carcass, chest heaving. My shoulder throbbed, but I didn't care. I was alive. I was dominant. I was the apex predator. I tore into the meat, tearing muscle and tendon like wet paper. It was fresh. Satisfying. And mine. In the darkness of the cave, I feasted. I had survived the humans. I had conquered the prey. But in the back of my mind, I knew more were coming. What if I am the Indominus Rex in Jurassic World? Chapter 22 The Predator Thinks. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The Triceratops's body lay motionless at my feet, steam still rising from its blood as it soaked into the cave floor. I had eaten my fill, thick meat torn from muscle and bone, warmth sliding down my throat in satisfying gulps. And yet, despite the fullness in my gut, I felt restless. I shifted slightly, my massive body making the stone floor tremble. The cave was dark, safe, quiet, everything my instincts should have craved after a hard hunt. I should have been asleep by now, recovering strength, healing the deep gouge along my shoulder where the Triceratops's horn had clipped me. But I couldn't. I lay my head down, feeling the rough texture of the stone under my jaw. My eyelids drooped lazily and yet my mind wouldn't still. It turned and twisted inside my skull, relentless, sharp-edged thoughts refusing to let me rest. I'm free. The words echoed in my head, almost like a question instead of a statement. I'm free. Aren't I? A low, grumbling breath escaped from my nostrils. I had spent so long inside those walls, a prisoner in a cage too small for something like me. For something that could think, reason, plan. They had thought they could hold me there forever. Like I was just some overgrown lizard. Idiots. I opened my eyes, glaring into the darkness. Freedom was sweet, intoxicating, but it was also unfamiliar. Terrifying in its own way. Out there, beyond the trees and rivers and rocks, the humans were gathering. I could feel it in the air itself, that strange buzz of their machines, their boots stomping on the soil, their chemical smells drifting on the wind. They wouldn't leave me alone. They couldn't. I was too dangerous. I knew too much. The humans would come for me with guns, with traps, with all the clever little tricks they thought would be enough. And I would outsmart them all. I shifted again, my muscles rippling under the scales. The pain in my shoulder throbbed dully, but I paid it no mind. I was built for this. I was designed for this. Yet even with the victory over the Triceratops fresh in my blood and bones, a part of me squirmed in discomfort. It wasn't just the humans. It wasn't even the pain. It was the silence. The cave was too still. Too empty. The hunt had filled the void for a little while, but now that it was over, the old loneliness was creeping back in, sinking its claws into my mind. Just like the paddock. I lifted my head, growling low in my throat, the sound bouncing back at me from the walls. I hated it. I hated the stillness. I hated being alone with my thoughts. How many days had it been since my escape? 2. 3. Already it was starting again, that slow erosion of my mind, that gnawing hunger for more than just food. I needed something to do. Something to hunt, something to chase, something to think about besides the emptiness. My claws scraped the stone floor as I rose to my feet. Fine. If I couldn't sleep, I would move. I would explore more of this island. Find new places to hide, new ways to strike. I would not sit in a hole like some wounded animal waiting for death. I paused near the mouth of the cave, lifting my snout to taste the wind. New scents drifted to me: prey, water, humans. Distant, but there. I would not let them cage me again. If they thought they could outsmart me, they had no idea what they were dealing with. I glanced once at the Triceratops's carcass. A trophy of my new life, my new reign over this wild, chaotic place. Then I turned and slipped into the forest, blending into the shadows. Freedom had a price. And I would make sure the humans paid it in full. Chapter 23: Let the games begin. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The jungle shifted and murmured around me as I moved. Branches snapped under my weight, and the humid air clung to my scales, thick and heavy. Somewhere above, the sun drifted toward the horizon, casting long, jagged shadows between the trees. Evening would fall soon. Good. The humans were weaker at night. Slower. More afraid. I prowled forward, each massive step silent despite my size. Instinct and memory worked together. Shredder's mind, Indominus's body blending human cunning with the brutal efficiency of a born predator. My nostrils flared. The smell of concrete hit me. I slowed, creeping low through the undergrowth, my belly brushing against the ferns. Up ahead, I saw it, a series of low buildings and tall fences, hidden behind camouflage netting and false treelines. But I could see past the lies. I could smell the prey. My lips curled into a savage grin. It wasn't just another paddock. It was a holding facility. A place where they kept the smaller dinosaurs, the ones meant for shows or tourist attractions. I could smell them all: the biting scent of the carnivores, the musk of the herbivores, the sharp, metallic stink of fear. I crouched there, just watching for a moment. I could leave, a voice whispered in my mind. Go back into the forest. Stay hidden. Stay safe. I bared my teeth. Safe was a cage. Safe was death in slow motion. No. I wasn't meant to hide. I was meant to rule. A slow, deep rumble built in my throat, vibrating through my chest. Let's make this island a little more exciting. I moved. First came the walls. Concrete. Metal fences. Nothing I couldn't tear through if I chose. But smashing the walls was noisy. Sloppy. Predictable. Think, Shredder, think. I crept around the perimeter, my eyes scanning, my mind racing. There. Near the far end, a series of maintenance tunnels and service doors, designed for keepers and handlers to move without disturbing the tourists. I could smell the grease and oil from the doors. The locks would be simple. Meant to stop a raptor, maybe. Not me. I pressed my claws against the seam of the door, feeling the vibration through the metal. Then with a flick of my wrist I jammed my claw into the thin line between the frame and the door. Metal groaned and shrieked as I pried it open, careful to make the damage look messy. Like something small had worked at it over time. Not a strategic breach. Inside, the air was cooler, staler. I moved fast, silent, sticking to the shadows. One by one, I found the cages. The pens. Locked. But weak. I stood before the first one, a group of ornitholsts, small carnivores, like nasty little wolves with feathers. They screeched and scrambled at the sight of me, their tiny minds filled with terror. Good. I slashed the latch holding the gate closed, and the metal whined open. The ornitholsts stared at me for a moment, frozen between fear and opportunity, then scattered into the jungle like a burst of dark feathers. I grinned, pleased with myself. One down. I moved through the facility, finding more pens. Gallimimus. Pachycephalosaurus. Even a few Dimetrodons, hissing and snapping in their watery enclosures. Each one I freed. Each one I unleashed onto the island. Chaos. Confusion. My allies. They wouldn't understand, of course. They were just animals, driven by hunger and panic. But they would distract the humans. Scatter them. Keep them busy. And that was exactly what I needed. By the time I was finished, the holding facility looked abandoned, broken. Cages stood open, walls cracked, sirens beginning to wail faintly in the distance. I turned and melted back into the trees, my heart pounding with adrenaline and triumph. Let the games begin. POV Simon Masrani. The helicopter rumbled beneath him as it dipped lower over the island. Simon Masrani leaned forward, frowning at the chaos spreading below. Claire, what is going on down there? He demanded, raising his voice over the roar of the rotors. Claire Deering, clutching a tablet, looked pale, frazzled. Sir, we're still piecing it together, but multiple enclosures have been breached. Security is reporting several species loose. How? Masrani barked. Who authorized a release? No one. Claire said quickly. It looks like sabotage. Masrani swore under his breath. First the Indominus escaped, now this? Get me Vic Hoskins, he snapped. And tell Owen Grady I want his report on my desk yesterday. Claire nodded frantically, already tapping at her tablet. Masrani sat back, scowling out the helicopter's window. Something was wrong. Very wrong. This wasn't just a containment breach. It was coordinated. Planned. And somewhere out there, in the trees and the dark, something was watching. Waiting. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I lay hidden among the trees, my camouflage blending me into the forest. I could smell the panic already spreading across the island. The humans running, shouting, scrambling to contain what they couldn't understand. I rumbled deep in my chest, a sound like laughter, if a monster could laugh. Let's see how you like living in fear. Tomorrow would be even more fun. Chapter 24, The Beginning of the End. POV Owen Grady. I leaned against the battered jeep, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold. Sirens blared from across the island, an endless wail of warnings no one seemed able to obey. Panic was thick in the air, heavier even than the humid, jungle heat. Unbelievable, I muttered under my breath, rubbing a hand down my sweaty face. Across from me, Claire stormed back and forth like a woman possessed, barking into her tablet, snapping orders at any staff member brave enough to get close. This is a containment failure across 3 sectors. She snapped at one poor technician. How could this happen? The technician, a kid, couldn't have been more than 20, stammered, "We were re-looking into it, ma'am. We think the gates were manually compromised." Claire froze mid-step, her eyes narrowing. "Manually?" she echoed. The tech nodded frantically, sweat dripping down his forehead. It looks like someone or something broke into the maintenance doors. It wasn't from the inside." Claire turned sharply, her gaze landing on me like a knife. I shrugged. "Told you," I said casually. "This thing isn't just dangerous. It's thinking. Planning." Masrani strode up then, his face grim, lips pressed into a thin line. He looked around at the scattered staff, the scrambling guards, the flickering security feeds on portable monitors. This is not what we promised our guests," he said slowly, voice low and heavy. Claire tried to rally. "Sir, if we act quickly, we can still contain the breaches." Masrani cut her off with a sharp gesture. "No. You don't contain a situation like this. You survive it." He turned to me. "You've seen it up close, Mr. Grady. You know more about it than anyone. How do we stop this thing?" I shook my head slowly. "You don't," I said simply. They stared at me like I'd just slapped them. I pushed off the jeep and began pacing slowly, gathering my thoughts. "It's not just an animal," I said. "It's not even just a predator. It's a problem solver. It watches. It learns. It remembers." I turned, facing them fully. "And now it knows how weak we are." Claire paled, her fingers tightening around her tablet. Masrani's jaw clenched. For a moment, no one spoke. Above us, a flock of pteranodons shrieked as they took to the sky, startled by something deeper in the forest. I watched them go, feeling a deep pit open up in my gut. It's only going to get worse. POV Zach. I clutched my little brother's arm as we stumbled through the jungle, breathless, soaked, terrified. Every crashing branch, every distant roar made us flinch like whipped dogs. "Zach," Gray whimpered. What are we gonna do?" I tried to sound brave. Tried to sound like I wasn't 2 seconds from screaming myself. "I don't know," I admitted, voice shaking. Just keep moving. We gotta find a building. A jeep. Anything." We pushed through another wall of ferns and nearly collapsed onto a cracked concrete path. Relief hit me like a punch in the chest. "A road!" Gray cried. I nodded, yanking him along. "Come on. If we follow it, maybe we can get back to the main park." I didn't want to think about the monster out there. I didn't want to think about how close we'd come to dying. How close we still might be. I just focused on putting one foot in front of the other. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I lay half submerged in the cool mud of a riverbank, my body hidden beneath a thick tangle of reeds and vines. The water was soothing against my aching muscles, the mud masking my scent. I watched the humans scurrying in the distance. Tiny little insects, running around, shouting, setting up useless barricades and flares. Pathetic. I could smell their fear even from here. It was intoxicating. I shifted slightly, letting the mud cool my scales, and exhaled a long, low sigh. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow, they'd tighten their nets. Send more men. Bring bigger guns. But I had something they didn't. Patience. And hunger. I could wait. I could watch. And when the time was right. I licked my blood-stained teeth, thinking about the taste of the Triceratops still lingering on my tongue. When the time was right, I would hunt again. POV Masrani. Nightfall was coming fast. The lights along the park's main roads flickered and buzzed, a poor attempt to hold back the encroaching darkness. I stood with Claire and Owen at the command center, staring at the massive screens showing flickering security footage, most of it broken or simply gone. Reports of missing guests are coming in from multiple sectors, Claire said tightly, scrolling through a list that seemed to grow by the second. We have injuries. Possibly fatalities. Masrani nodded grimly. And the Indominus? Owen stepped forward. Last sighted near the southern marshes. But honestly. He shook his head. It could be anywhere by now. I took a slow breath, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. Thousands of lives. Billions of dollars. My entire dream, my entire life's work teetering on the edge of collapse. All because of one mistake. No. Not a mistake. A monster. I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles turned white. We have to stop it, I said quietly. Owen nodded once. But you're gonna need more than tranquilizer darts for this one. Chapter 25 Freedom and Fire. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I pushed through the dense undergrowth, each heavy step snapping tree trunks like twigs. The world smelled different tonight. Sweeter. Fresher. Fear was in the air. I could taste it on my tongue, thick and rich. Ahead, the park's perimeter fence glowed faintly in the moonlight, humming with weak electric pulses. It was nothing. A joke. I snarled low in my throat and stepped forward, slamming my shoulder into it with a thunderous crash. The wires snapped, sparking feebly before dying out. Another prison broken. Another door opened. Beyond the ruins of the fence, the forest expanded into a wide field of enclosures, steel pens, glass cages, all stuffed with different prey. Some sniffed cautiously at the broken gap. Others huddled back, too scared to believe freedom was real. I roared, long and deep, the sound echoing through the trees. Run, I urged them silently. Go. The herbivores were the first to bolt, a stampede of thick-bodied creatures surging into the darkness. I watched them go, not chasing. Not yet. More crashes, more fences bending and snapping. The night filled with the sounds of freedom and terror, hooves pounding the earth, wings flapping desperately into the sky. I moved on, still hungry for more destruction. POV Tourist Family. Mom. The little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve, pointing with a trembling finger at the treeline. Mom, look. She barely had time to turn before the first dinosaur, a huge, lumbering stegosaurus, burst from the trees, smashing through a decorative hedge like it was tissue paper. Screams erupted all around them. Tourists dropped ice creams, cameras, everything running in every direction as more dinosaurs poured into the open. A sleek pack of Gallimimus darted past, knocking over food carts and benches. A group of Triceratopses barreled after them, bellowing and panicked. The mother scooped up her son without thinking, heart hammering, sprinting toward the nearest building. Behind her, the air filled with crashing sounds and the roar of beasts once thought extinct. It was like a nightmare. A waking nightmare. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I prowled through the chaos, unseen among the trees. I didn't need to attack. This was better. Watching the humans scatter like ants. Hearing the alarms wail pointlessly. A flicker of movement caught my eye to the left. Soldiers. 6 of them, moving in a tight, cautious formation, flashlights sweeping, guns raised. Coming for me? Or for the others? Didn't matter. They were in my domain now. A heavy, rhythmic thudding made the ground tremble beneath my feet. I turned, curious. From the other side of the field lumbered a massive ankylosaurus, its armored back glinting in the spotlights, its heavy club tail swinging lazily. The soldiers spotted it too. Target in sight. Barked one into his radio. Engaging now. They fanned out, moving to surround it. Poor fools. The ankylosaurus, irritated by the flashing lights and shouting, let out a deep, guttural rumble. Then it charged. The soldiers opened fire. The night lit up with bursts of gunfire. Bullets pinged uselessly off the dinosaur's thick armor. The beast swung its clubbed tail with terrifying speed, slamming one soldier into the air like a ragdoll. Another tried to dive aside too slow. The tail smashed into him, sending him sprawling with a sickening crunch. Fall back! Someone shouted. But there was nowhere to fall back to. Two more soldiers rushed forward with nets and tasers, trying to subdue it. The Ankylosaurus stumbled under the electric shocks, but not enough. It thrashed wildly, throwing one net aside like a toy, its tail whipping dangerously close to the others. I watched, fascinated. Strength. Willpower. But even the Ankylosaurus couldn't fight forever. Another squad of soldiers arrived, this time armed with heavy tranquilizer rifles. Several darts sank into the beast's thick hide. It roared, stumbling. Another dart. And another. Finally, the mighty creature slumped to the ground, breathing heavily, still glaring even as unconsciousness claimed it. The surviving soldiers moved cautiously, beginning the tedious process of securing the dinosaur with thick chains and winches. I stayed hidden, feeling a strange mix of amusement and pity. They fought so hard to control what should never have been caged. But it was only the beginning. POV Control Room. Claire. We're losing control. A technician shouted over the din of alarms. Claire paced rapidly in front of the main monitors, hands clenched into fists. Where's Owen? She barked. En route to Sector 3. Came the reply. Masrani appeared at her side, looking grim. Damage reports. Multiple paddocks breached. Dozens of dinosaurs loose in the park. Casualties are coming in. Claire swallowed hard, forcing down the rising panic. This wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. Masrani just looked at her sadly. No, he said. But it did. On the screen, they could see another herd of dinosaurs stampeding through the visitor center courtyard, tourists running, screaming. The park had become a war zone. And the Indominus Rex was still out there. Waiting. Watching. Planning. Chapter 26 Clash of Teeth and Horns. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I moved through the broken park like a ghost, every step silent despite my massive size. The air was thick with smoke, now black, oily clouds rising from the burning buildings humans had abandoned in their panic. I liked it. The smoke masked my scent, made it harder for them to track me. The night was alive with chaos. Roars. Screams. Gunfire in the distance. It made something deep in my chest vibrate with savage joy. This was freedom. Brutal, raw, perfect. I had just finished pulling apart the last pieces of another fallen fence when I smelled it. Something different. Something dangerous. I lifted my head, nostrils flaring, tasting the air. Another predator. Close. I shifted my body lower to the ground instinctively, muscles coiled, my eyes scanning the ruined forest ahead. A shadow moved between the trees. Then, it stepped into the clearing. It was smaller than me by a lot but powerful looking, its thick neck supporting a blocky head adorned with two sharp horns above its eyes. A Carnotaurus. I recognized it instantly, from half-remembered flashes in Indominus's memories. Fierce, fast, deadly, but nothing compared to me. It saw me at the same time. For a moment, we just stared at each other, two predators, two kings of different domains sizing each other up. I could almost feel its thoughts. Sizing up my bulk. Judging its chances. The Carnotaurus let out a deep, rumbling growl, stomping a clawed foot into the dirt. Challenge. A slow, wicked smile spread through my mind. Finally, I thought. Something worth my time. I roared back a deafening blast that shook the ground. The Carnotaurus didn't flinch. It lunged forward without warning, mouth gaping wide, rows of serrated teeth aiming straight for my throat. I twisted aside, faster than it expected, feeling the rush of air as its jaws snapped shut just inches from my scales. My claws lashed out, scoring bloody lines across its shoulder. It bellowed in rage and pain, wheeling around with surprising agility. We circled each other warily, looking for an opening. This wasn't just a hunt. It was a duel. For dominance. For survival. For the sheer bloody thrill of it. The Carnotaurus struck again, faster this time, its horns aimed low like a bull charging. I dodged, barely, feeling one sharp horn scrape along my side, drawing a shallow line of blood. Pain flared brief, sharp. I grinned wider inside my mind. Good. I needed to feel alive. I retaliated, slamming my tail sideways with all my strength. The blow caught the Carnotaurus in the ribs, sending it stumbling sideways, crashing through a small tree with a thunderous crack. I charged after it, jaws open wide, aiming to end it. But it recovered quicker than I expected, ducking under my bite and raking its claws across my chest. More blood. Hot. Pumping. I laughed internally, a wild, unhinged sound. This was what I was made for. The Carnotaurus backed up a few steps, panting heavily, eyes never leaving mine. It knew it was outmatched. Knew it in its bones. But it wasn't going to back down. Respect stirred inside me. Stupid. But brave. We clashed again, teeth snapping, claws slashing, bodies colliding with earth-shaking force. It tried to get under me, aiming to flip me with its lower center of gravity. Smart. But not smart enough. I let it think it was working, let it push against my side, then twisted sharply, bringing my entire weight crashing down on it. The Carnotaurus gave a strangled roar as it was pinned, my claws digging deep into its flanks. Its legs kicked helplessly. I leaned in, my jaws closing around its thick neck. It thrashed, but it was too late. With a savage jerk, I wrenched sideways. Bone snapped with a sickening crack. The Carnotaurus shuddered once and went still. I held the limp body for a moment, feeling its last warmth against my teeth. Then I dropped it, breathing hard, chest heaving. Blood dripped from my jaws, staining the torn grass below. I stood over the fallen predator, savoring the victory. Not because I needed to kill. Not because I was hungry. Because it proved what I already knew. I was unstoppable. POV Park Control Room. Chaos. Absolute chaos. We lost visual on the Indominus. Someone yelled. Claire clutched the railing, staring at the screens showing nothing but static and burning trees. We can't even track it. Another technician cried. It's moving too fast and it's not following any pattern. Masrani's face was pale as he watched. This is no longer about control, he said grimly. It's about survival. Somewhere, far away, they heard another deep, victorious roar tear through the night. The sound of a monster that knew finally, truly it was free. Chapter 27 King Without Chains. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I stood over the broken corpse of the Carnotaurus for a while longer, chest heaving with the effort of the fight. The adrenaline, the savage thrill, it faded slower than I expected. For a few minutes, I just breathed. Let the blood cool. Let my mind catch up. The world around me felt sharper now. Every tree, every sound, every distant crack of gunfire or panicked human scream, they all seemed vivid. Bright. Real in a way nothing had been inside that sterile, concrete prison they built for me. I turned my head slowly, scanning the broken forest. The scent of blood filled the air, not just the Carnotaurus, but prey animals too. And humans. The park was crumbling. I could feel it. The order, the control, the fences, they were all falling apart like wet paper. I smiled inwardly. Good. Let them feel helpless. Let them know they were never in charge. The humans had built this place believing they could tame monsters. That they could put a leash on things like me. Fools. I stepped away from the body finally, tail sweeping low to the ground behind me. I didn't need to stay here. Didn't need to defend my victory. I had bigger things to do. The trees swallowed me up as I moved deeper into the heart of the park. The forest grew denser the farther I went. I slowed my pace, savoring the coolness of the shade, the scent of earth and growing things. Birds scattered from the trees above me, screeching warnings to anything that would listen. Good. Let them run. The forest was mine now. It was strange, though. For a moment, just a flicker, I wondered what I was supposed to do next. Wander? Hunt? Destroy? I had broken free. I had defeated challengers. And yet, there was a hollow place inside me, a gnawing emptiness that no amount of blood or freedom seemed to fill. Loneliness? I shook the thought off angrily, snarling low in my throat. I wasn't some fragile creature that needed companionship. I was power incarnate. I was the nightmare they tried to cage. Still, I missed the feeling of the earth shaking beneath a herd's stampede. The thrill of pursuit. The kill. I missed the hunt. Not just eating. The real hunt. Outsmarting. Outmaneuvering. Overpowering. I needed that again. And soon. As if the universe heard my unspoken wish, a low rumble vibrated through the trees ahead. I froze, ears pricking forward. It wasn't thunder. Not the hum of distant vehicles either. It was roaring. Fighting. The sounds of predators clashing. My blood stirred instantly. Without hesitation, I broke into a silent run, weaving between the thick trunks like a phantom. Closer. The noise sharpened. The metallic clang of weapons. The heavy grunt of struggling animals. I burst through the last line of trees and froze, hidden in the shadows. A herd of dinosaurs, armored herbivores with massive, mace-like tails, had been herded into a makeshift enclosure. Spiked fences hastily put up by the humans. They were fighting back. A small team of humans in tactical gear scrambled around them, trying to keep order. The dinosaurs swung their tails viciously, one smashing into a transport truck and crumpling it like paper. Soldiers shouted orders, firing tranquilizer darts uselessly at the thick-skinned creatures. I watched for a long moment, amusement bubbling inside me. They thought they could recapture this? I almost wanted to let them try. But something meaner flickered through me. They didn't deserve to rebuild this. They deserved to watch it burn. I prowled forward, keeping low, moving closer to the edge of the battle. The humans hadn't seen me yet. They were too busy screaming orders and dodging angry tails. One dinosaur, a thick-bodied ankylosaurus, roared and charged a group of soldiers, its heavy tail swinging low. It struck two of them squarely, sending them flying like rag dolls. Another tried to run, only to trip over a fallen log. Chaos. Beautiful chaos. I stayed hidden. I could have charged in. Could have ended it in minutes. But this wasn't my fight. Not yet. I was a god among mortals now. And gods chose their battles carefully. I turned silently, slipping back into the trees. Let them tear each other apart. I had bigger things to do. POV Human Sector, Jurassic World. Screams echoed down the hallways. Parents dragged children toward emergency exits. Tourists cried out in fear as herds of freed dinosaurs roamed through the main streets. Security officers shouted over radios, trying desperately to coordinate. But it was obvious. They had lost. Everywhere you looked, broken fences, empty cages, terror. This was no longer a theme park. It was a battlefield. And at the center of it all, an invisible, unstoppable predator was shaping the chaos with claws and fangs. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I climbed a low hill, breathing deeply of the chaos below. My domain now. The kingdom they built was crumbling. And I was its new king. A shadow among ruins. Chapter 28 Evacuation. POV Claire Deering. I gripped the radio so tightly my knuckles turned white. Static crackled uselessly through the speakers. No new updates. No orders. Only chaos. All across Jurassic World, reports kept flooding in broken fences, freed carnivores, injuries, deaths. We had lost containment. Everywhere. The thought made bile rise in my throat. This wasn't a park anymore. It was a massacre waiting to happen. Masrani was dead. The military teams we had brought in were getting picked apart like they were nothing. And the Indominus Rex, our greatest mistake, was still out there. Free. Hunting. Tears stung the corners of my eyes, but I wiped them away viciously. Chapter 29 Loose Ends. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The late afternoon sun beat down on my scales as I lumbered through the undergrowth, the earth shaking slightly beneath each of my heavy steps. I felt satisfied. My massive jaws worked lazily, crunching through the remains of a triceratops I'd brought down earlier. The kill had been easier than I'd expected. A quick ambush from the trees, a vicious snap at its hind leg, and it went down thrashing. The others fled in panic, bellowing into the trees, leaving one of their own behind. Cowards. Or maybe smart. Depends how you looked at it. I tore off another chunk of meat, feeling blood smear against my teeth. For the first time since waking up in this monstrous body, I actually felt full. A low rumble of contentment rolled in my throat. But even as I ate, part of me stayed alert. Always listening. Always watching. Humans would come eventually. They always did. They couldn't stand not being in control. I licked the blood from my snout and turned my head, peering through the dense forest. The island smelled different now. Full of fear. Animals panicked and ran without thinking. Birds screamed warnings overhead. I was a ghost in this chaos. A demon that the world wasn't ready for. And deep inside me, beneath the predatory instincts and the hunger, the old human part, the shredder part, chuckled bitterly. Congratulations, I thought to myself. You broke the world. I crushed the triceratops' skull under one massive foot and kept moving, licking my teeth clean as I walked. POV Claire Deering. The command center buzzed with frantic energy. People shouted over each other. Screens flashed red warnings across every wall. I pushed my way through, heart pounding in my chest, until I spotted Owen near the main security feed. He looked up as I approached, his face grim. They're pulling everyone off the island, he said without preamble. I stared at him, trying to process the words. They're evacuating. I repeated numbly. Owen nodded. The ferries are loading now. Helicopters, boats, anything they can find. But the guests, I started, panic rising. Their priority, Owen cut in sharply. We stay any longer, Claire, and there won't be anyone left to save. I swallowed hard. He was right. I hated it, but he was right. Think, Claire. Think. Gray. Zack, I said suddenly, gripping Owen's arm. We have to find them. He nodded immediately, without hesitation. Lead the way. No more wasted time. We moved through the halls at a run, dodging frightened staff and confused guests. Somewhere, deep down, I knew. I might not see this place again. The thought twisted in my gut, sharp and bitter. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I crouched low behind a rocky outcrop, my nostrils flaring. The smell of prey drifted thick in the humid air. Herbivores. Herds of them. Nervous. Panicked. Their instincts screamed at them to run, but they didn't know where. Perfect. My muscles tensed as I surveyed the field before me, dinosaurs of all shapes and sizes, milling helplessly around. I could take my pick. But I wasn't hungry anymore. No. This was sport now. It was something else. A way to remind myself that I was still the apex here. Still the king. Still alive. I watched for a while longer, then turned away with a low grunt, my massive body blending into the shadows. There would be other hunts. Other kills. Tonight, maybe. Or tomorrow. For now, I had other plans. POV Zach Mitchell. I shoved my brother into the maintenance hallway, slamming the door behind us and gasping for breath. My heart hammered against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Did you see that thing? I hissed. Gray nodded furiously, his face pale. We leaned against the cold metal wall, listening for any sound of pursuit. Nothing. Thank God. For now. Okay, I said between gasps, trying to steady myself. Change of plans. No more tours. No more adventures. We find Aunt Claire and we get off this island. Gray nodded again, wide-eyed. For once, no arguments. We were in way over our heads and we both knew it. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the ruined park. I prowled along the edge of a broken enclosure, the smashed remains of electric fences hanging uselessly. Another herd of herbivores had broken free here. I could smell their panic still lingering in the dirt. Humans would call this chaos. To me, it felt like freedom. For the first time, I moved without chains. Without walls. Without cages. The forest opened up before me like an endless promise. The island was mine now. Chapter 30 The Hunt Begins. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. Night fell over the island like a heavy curtain. The air grew thick and humid, insects buzzing endlessly, and the stars blinked above me through the canopy of the trees. My muscles ached pleasantly from the day's movements. I stretched lazily in the shadows, the tips of my claws digging into the soft earth. I breathed in deeply through my nostrils. The scent of the wild. The scent of freedom. And somewhere, faint, the scent of blood. Good, I thought lazily. Let the world bleed if it must. I shifted, my massive body rustling the leaves. Tonight, I had no plans. Tonight, I would hunt. Not out of hunger, no, I'd already eaten. But for the simple, primal pleasure of it. The part of me that still remembered being human felt guilty. Just a little. But it was like a whisper drowned in the tidal wave of instinct. I was the apex predator now. It wasn't about right or wrong. It was about survival. POV Owen Grady. Come on, move it. I barked at the small group of tourists straggling behind. We rushed through the abandoned maintenance corridors, flashlights flickering. Some of the guests were shell-shocked, barely moving. Others were crying. I couldn't blame them. The park had gone to hell faster than I thought possible. Claire was ahead, holding Gray's and Zock's hands tightly. I watched her head snap from side to side, scanning every shadow. Good instincts. Better late than never. We'd managed to reach the evacuation point, but we weren't out yet. Not even close. Overhead, I heard the distant thwump 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 of helicopters. Maybe they'd get most of the people off the island. Maybe. If we survived long enough. I gritted my teeth. We needed to move faster. The Indominus was still out there. And it wasn't finished. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I moved through the forest like a ghost, weaving between the trees silently despite my size. The prey were out there, I could smell them. I could hear them. Small ones. Big ones. Some alone. Some clustered together in terror. Humans. Dinosaurs. It didn't matter. This was my night. I paused atop a ridge and peered down. There, illuminated faintly by the pale moonlight, were the broken remains of another enclosure. A group of Parasaurolophus, their strange crests bobbing, huddled nervously inside the shattered fences. I tilted my head, watching. I could kill one easily. Just one. The thought teased at me, sending a thrill through my blood. But then, movement caught my eye elsewhere. Humans. Armed. Cautious. Soldiers. I smiled, at least, the monstrous reptilian version of a smile. So they're still trying. I turned away from the herbivores, my curiosity piqued. The hunt just got more interesting. POV Security Team Leader. Keep your eyes open, I muttered into the headset. My squad moved through the ruins of the paddock in a loose formation, weapons raised. The briefings had been a nightmare. Half the cameras were dead, the trackers offline. The Indominus was loose somewhere out here, and so were about a dozen other dinosaurs that shouldn't have been. We spot it, we fall back, I reminded the team. No heroics. Copy, came a chorus of nervous replies. The air smelled wrong. Thick. Metallic. Like blood and rain and something, alien. I hated it. I hated all of this. The worst part was we still hadn't seen the damn thing. No visual confirmation. Just stories. Just bodies. And that made it worse. My boots crunched on broken branches as we moved forward into the dark. I didn't know if we would come back out. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I followed them. Stalking through the darkness with a patience that came from instinct and a mind sharpened by 2 lifetimes. They thought they were hunting me. How adorable. I lowered my body close to the ground, moving silently. Closer. The soldiers swept their lights in nervous arcs, never quite pointing at me. Closer. One of them tripped over a root and cursed under his breath. The others barely noticed, too focused on scanning ahead. Now. With a roar that shook the trees, I lunged. Panic exploded through the group. They fired wildly, the muzzles of their guns flashing desperately. I felt a few rounds ping harmlessly off my thick scales. In a second, I was among them, swatting one aside with a casual flick of my tail, sending him flying into a tree with a sickening crack. The others scattered like frightened rats. I didn't chase them. Not yet. I had made my point. They weren't the hunters. I was. I let out another roar, this one longer, deeper, filled with primal satisfaction. The night answered with silence. Good. POV Claire Deering. We reached the ferry loading docks in a ragged sprint. Everywhere I looked, people pushed and shoved, desperate to escape. Boats were already pulling away, packed to the brim with guests. More helicopters hovered overhead, spotlights cutting through the darkness. I tightened my grip on the boys. We were almost there. Almost safe. Owen caught up beside me, breathless. We made it, I gasped. Yeah, he said grimly, scanning the shadows behind us. For now. The boys clung to me, trembling. I wrapped my arms around them tightly, shielding them as best I could. I promised their mother I would keep them safe. And I intended to keep that promise. No matter what. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I stood atop the ridge, watching the chaos unfold at the docks far below. So many tiny, desperate creatures scrambling to escape. I could crush them all if I wanted to. But I didn't move. Not yet. There would be time enough for that. For now, I watched. I learned. I remembered. And I waited. Because the night was still young. Chapter 31 The Storm Brews. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The night had been long, but it had felt like no time at all. A blur of motion, sounds, smells, and the feeling of raw power coursing through me. I was becoming the storm. The island had already begun to tear itself apart. Enclosures, once imposing structures, lay in ruins. Fences were down, some of them twisted like paper, mangled from the force of my claws or the other creature's desperate escape. I could feel the tremors of it. The chaos. But none of it was enough to satisfy me. Not yet. I padded through the dense foliage, my eyes gleaming with a mixture of exhilaration and cold calculation. The adrenaline still thrummed beneath my skin like an electric current, keeping me alive, keeping me hungry. Something inside me, some flicker of what was once Shredder, pulled at the back of my mind. I had been a leader once. A tactician. A warrior. A being who struck fear into others. But now I am a god. I could feel the instincts of the Indominus taking over, the primal rage and hunger, but there was something else, something much darker that was stirring. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about conquest. And I had learned from the best. I had to become more. I had to bring chaos to its knees. There was no escaping the truth. The island was mine now. POV Owen Grady. The group of survivors had gathered by the helicopter landing area, but the air was thick with uncertainty. I stood with Claire and the kids, watching the horizon warily. Somewhere out there, the Indominus was still free, still hunting. The chaos hadn't stopped. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The helicopters, the soldiers, everything seemed too calm. It was too quiet. Even the air felt thick, like the calm before a storm. Where are the others? Claire asked. She was speaking to herself, but I caught the tremor in her voice. She was trying to stay strong, trying to keep it together for Gray and Zack. I glanced over at the kids. They were clinging to each other, wide-eyed and terrified. The look on their faces made me feel guilty for putting them in this position. I don't know, I muttered, my gaze darting over the chaos around us. They should have been here by now. I turned back to Claire. We should get moving. I'm not sure how much longer this place is going to stay standing. She gave a slow nod, biting her lip. I can't believe it's come to this. I swallowed hard. Neither can I. A few of the soldiers were still trying to get the evacuation coordinated, but no one was in a hurry. The situation was devolving into pure panic. The island was falling apart, and we were all caught in the middle of it. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The faint hum of distant helicopters reached my ears, and I tilted my head, listening intently. Humans. I could smell them. It wasn't just the scent of fear in the air, it was their sweat, their anxiety. I could feel them moving like ants on the ground, thinking they were in control. They were wrong. They were always wrong. I moved towards the sound, my feet silent on the ground. I was getting closer to their gathering point. I could see the flickering lights from the helicopters above, barely cutting through the heavy jungle canopy. The scent of food of people filled my nostrils, and I couldn't help but feel a deep, instinctual need to close the distance. But I stopped. I paused at the edge of a ridge, watching them from the shadows. They didn't know I was there. They never did. I could kill them. It would be so easy. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Not while there was more to learn. POV Claire Deering. We were finally on the helicopter, but even as we ascended, the panic of the island was impossible to ignore. The sound of rotor blades filled the air, but beneath that was the sickening, terrifying truth: the island was falling apart. I could see the park below, but what I saw wasn't the thriving, carefully controlled environment we had worked so hard to build. It was a war zone. Broken enclosures. Overturned jeeps. Soldiers scrambling. The look on Owen's face was grim, his jaw tight, eyes darting constantly from side to side. He wasn't saying anything, but I could see that he was thinking the same thing I was. This is not over. Behind us, Zack and Gray were huddled close together, pale-faced and silent. They didn't understand yet. They didn't know how bad it was. But I did. And I hated it. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I stayed low as I moved through the jungle, stalking with purpose. The helicopter was gone now, but I knew they would be back. I could feel it. There were more humans, more soldiers, more chaos on the way. It was inevitable. I could have followed the helicopters, torn them out of the sky, but I didn't. Not yet. There was something else I needed first. I needed to make them understand that I wasn't some accident of science. I wasn't a mere creation of technology. I was power incarnate. The island was my domain. And soon, the world would know. POV Owen Grady. The ride back to the mainland was long, uncomfortable, and eerily silent. I could feel the weight of Claire's gaze on me, but she didn't say anything. Neither did I. There was nothing left to say. We had done everything we could. We had survived the chaos, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. I looked out of the helicopter window, watching the island slowly recede into the distance. Was it really over? POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I prowled the jungle for the rest of the night, hunting, moving, waiting. And then, just as the first rays of sunlight began to cut through the trees, I came to a stop. A figure stepped out of the shadows. A human. The same human. I had seen him before. It was Owen Grady. But this time, he wasn't running. He was standing there, facing me, like he was waiting for me to make the first move. I growled low in my throat, feeling the muscles in my legs tense as I prepared to strike. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. Instead, he just looked at me, a quiet challenge in his eyes. This isn't over, I thought to myself, as I sized him up. I could taste it in the air. The challenge. The hunt. And it would begin soon. Chapter 32 The tension mounts. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I stood still in the thick underbrush, watching Owen. He was standing there, as calm as could be, his eyes fixed on me. He didn't flinch. Didn't even move his feet. But there was something in the air, a tension that thrummed between us. It was the kind of standoff that animals knew all too well, one where neither side wanted to show weakness. Who are you to challenge me? I could feel my muscles twitch, the hunger inside of me rising. I wanted to end this, to show him that I was not just a creature of their creation, I was the apex predator. I was the storm. But something about his stillness made me hesitate. For a moment, the jungle around us seemed to hold its breath. Then he spoke, his voice low, but filled with resolve. I know you're angry, Owen said, his gaze never wavering. But this isn't what you were meant to be. His words struck a chord deep inside me, a strange echo of the memories from the Indominus Rex's past. I wasn't supposed to exist, and neither was she. We were experiments. Pieces in a broken puzzle. My rage built, and I stepped forward, my massive claws digging into the earth with each movement. But Owen didn't flinch. He wants to play this game, does he? I growled low, my teeth bared as I took another step forward. The forest around us seemed to close in, the sound of my growls and the crackling of leaves beneath my paws all that filled the silence. POV Owen Grady. I didn't move, not even a step. The air felt heavy, almost thick with the weight of what was happening. I could see the rage in the creature's eyes, no longer just a product of genetic engineering, but something more. It was more intelligent than I had imagined, more aware of its surroundings, more aware of me. I could feel my pulse quicken, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You're not a monster," I said, trying to sound confident. "But you don't have to keep running. You don't have to keep hiding." The Indominus Rex's eyes flickered for a moment, a subtle shift, almost as if it was considering my words. Then, with a deep, guttural growl, it lunged forward, teeth snapping through the air. But I wasn't ready to die here. Not today. I jumped back just in time, barely dodging the sharp teeth that could have torn me in two. My heart raced as the creature's claws swiped just inches from my face. This thing, this nightmare, wasn't the same beast that had been created on a whim. No, it had evolved. Adapted. It wasn't just a predator, it was a hunter. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I felt the rush of adrenaline flood my system as I lunged. I could smell him now, feel his fear and his determination. It was intoxicating. But there was something else, something that held me back, that kept me from fully giving in to the hunt. What's wrong with me? I froze for a moment, sensing that something in the balance had shifted. Owen hadn't moved, he had simply dodged my attack. He was not afraid. And for some strange reason, that made me hesitate. He was offering me something, and I didn't know how to respond. I had been an agent of chaos before, a warrior, a monster. But now, facing this human, I found myself questioning it all. Why had I hesitated? I shook my head, growling low. "Focus!" With a roar, I charged again, but this time, I knew I couldn't simply kill him. Not yet. POV Owen Grady. I could hear the beast's roar grow louder, but there was something different this time. It wasn't the fury of a mindless creature. It was something more calculated. More intelligent. The Indominus wasn't just attacking. It was testing me. I could feel my muscles tense as it barreled toward me, its jaw snapping. This time, I wasn't sure if I'd be fast enough to dodge. I reached for my tranquilizer gun, the last hope I had to stop this thing. But as I raised it, I realized that I might not even get the shot off in time. My finger brushed against the trigger, but something stopped me. I looked into the creature's eyes. The same eyes I had seen in my worst nightmares. But there was something there that I hadn't expected. A flicker of recognition? I couldn't quite place it. Was it me? Did it recognize me from before? Or was it just an animal reacting to its surroundings? Before I could decide, the creature paused. It stopped mid-charge, its massive body halting just inches from me. It was like it had seen something beyond the immediate threat of the moment. What the hell? I lowered the gun slowly, the uncertainty creeping in again. There was no telling what this thing was thinking. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I felt it again, that strange pull of recognition. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger anymore. There was a choice. And for the first time, I wasn't sure what the right decision was. I had always been the one to strike first, to dominate, to crush whatever stood in my way. But here, now, with this human, it felt different. My instincts warred within me. I could tear him apart. I could run. But I hesitated. I didn't know why. I stepped back, my claws scraping against the earth. There was no point in charging him again. Not now. For once, I would let him live. POV Owen Grady. I stood there, heart hammering in my chest, watching the Indominus. For the briefest of moments, it felt like it was weighing its options, sizing me up in a way I never expected. Then, without a sound, it turned. And just like that, it was gone, disappearing back into the jungle. I exhaled in a long, shaky breath, wiping the sweat off my brow. What had just happened? Shit, I muttered under my breath. This isn't over. POV Claire Deering. I stood just outside the evacuation tent, watching the chaos unfold. The helicopters had left, but I could feel the weight of it all. The fear, the destruction, the madness that had overtaken the island. And in the distance, I saw something moving. A shadow. It wasn't one of the soldiers, or the park workers. It was too large, too powerful. It's still out there. I felt the cold chill of dread settle in my chest. The Indominus wasn't done. It wasn't done by a long shot. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I was free. For now. But the island, this land of chaos, was changing. And I would change with it. There was still more to do, more to conquer. The hunt had just begun. Chapter 33 The chase continues. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The forest was alive with sounds of birds and insects, yet everything felt oddly quiet. Too quiet for my liking. My massive form moved between the trees, my muscles still twitching with anticipation from the brief encounter with Owen. I hadn't expected that moment of hesitation. It was unlike me. I had always been driven by instinct, by the need to dominate. But now, with Owen's face still burned into my memory, there was a new feeling, something I had never experienced before. Doubt? No. I shook my massive head, brushing the thought away. I wasn't some confused, lost animal. I was a predator, the predator. Nothing should be able to make me stop. I prowled deeper into the jungle, my eyes scanning for any sign of movement. There was nothing in sight, but the forest was teeming with life. The air was thick with the scent of fresh vegetation, and I could hear the distant calls of other creatures, prey, perhaps. Or something far more dangerous. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but something in me screamed to keep moving, to keep hunting. I needed to feel the rush again, the chase. POV Owen Grady. I stood by the edge of the jungle, watching the Indominus Rex disappear into the trees. A strange silence hung in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the beast wasn't just hunting, it was thinking. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what that meant. Hey, Grady, you all right? I turned to see Claire approaching, her eyes filled with concern. I'm fine, I said quickly, though I wasn't. That thing, it let you go. Her voice was tinged with disbelief. It could have killed you right then and there. I nodded, but I wasn't so sure. The Indominus had spared me, but why? There was no way it was a fluke. I've never seen anything like it, I muttered. It's not just a mindless predator. That creature, it's aware. It's calculating. Then we need to get out of here, Claire said, her voice urgent. You saw what happened at the park. It's all falling apart. We can't control it anymore. I looked out at the distant trees where the Indominus had disappeared. I know, I said. But it's not over yet. Not by a long shot. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I had paused just beyond the treeline, listening to the faint voices of the humans behind me. They were talking, no doubt, about me. My instincts told me to ignore them, but I couldn't. Not now. Not when there was something so intriguing about the way they spoke about me. They feared me, yes. But there was more than fear in their voices. I had the distinct feeling they were underestimating me. They think I'm just a mistake. But I'm not. I'm more than that. The thoughts came to me unbidden, surprising me with their clarity. My existence, my whole being, was not just a freak accident. I was the culmination of science, of ambition. I was the apex. And they're going to regret ever doubting me. I took a deep breath and pushed my thoughts away. There was no time for pondering. The hunt was still on. I slipped through the underbrush, moving swiftly toward the distant rumble of a herd. It wasn't hard to find prey in a jungle like this. The scent of herbivores filled the air, a sure sign that dinner was nearby. I paused, listening for any sound that would give away my position. The herd was close, too close. I had to act now. POV Claire Deering. The sound of the helicopters overhead was deafening, but it didn't stop the anxiety from gnawing at me. We were trying to evacuate as many people as we could, but with the situation spiraling out of control, there was no way we were going to get everyone off the island in time. I couldn't stop thinking about the Indominus. Owen had been right, it wasn't just a dinosaur. It was something else. It was intelligent. More than I ever imagined. And if we didn't get a handle on this soon, there was no telling what would happen next. Claire. I turned at the sound of my name. One of the park workers, a tall man with glasses, rushed toward me, his face pale. What is it? I asked, trying to remain calm. They've breached the west wall, he said, voice trembling. A bunch of the enclosure's raptors, Triceratops, even the Carnotaurus have gotten out. It's a total mess. I felt the blood drain from my face. This is it. It's all going down. Get to the command center, I ordered, trying to steady my voice. Tell them to initiate a full lockdown. Get the helicopters back here, now. Yes, ma'am, he said, and sprinted off. I stood still for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. The Indominus wasn't the only one escaping. The island was falling apart and quickly. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I crouched in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment. The herd was moving in front of me, their large bodies shifting through the foliage. They hadn't noticed me yet, which was a mistake. I could feel my muscles tensing, the hunt instinct kicking in. The scent of one of the Triceratops' young, weak drove me to action. I moved with lightning speed, tearing through the underbrush and leaping out at the nearest Triceratops. It didn't have time to react before my jaws clamped down on its neck. The air filled with the scent of blood, the animal's roar muffled as I dragged it to the ground. I didn't stop. The others ran, but I didn't care. I needed this. I needed to feel the power again, to remind myself of who I was. POV Claire Deering. I looked out across the compound, my mind racing. The workers were scrambling, trying to get people evacuated, but the chaos was only just beginning. We can't keep doing this, I muttered to myself. We need to get out. It's too late to fix this. My radio crackled to life, a voice I recognized coming through. Claire, this is Owen. We've got a situation. What now? I asked, not surprised. The Indominus is on the move again, Owen replied, his voice tense. It's out there, hunting. And it's not just hunting for food. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean? It's hunting for something else. Something bigger. And I think it knows it's in control now. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I stood over the carcass of the Triceratops, my jaws still dripping with blood. It had been quick. Efficient. But now, something nagged at me. There was a new scent in the air, one I didn't recognize. It wasn't the scent of prey. It wasn't even human. It was the scent of something I had not yet encountered. Another predator? I turned my head, my eyes narrowing as I looked out into the trees. Something was coming. Chapter 34 Clash of Beasts. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The scent in the air grew thicker, more pungent, more dangerous. It wasn't just the usual prey scent I had learned to ignore over the past few days. No, this was something else. A predator, just as I was. And it was close. Too close. I crouched low in the underbrush, my massive frame hidden behind the foliage, my sharp eyes scanning the clearing ahead. There, just beyond the trees, I saw the massive shape. A hulking silhouette moving toward me, slow but deliberate. The ground trembled slightly with each step it took. The sound of heavy breathing filled the air, and I could feel the tension coil in my muscles. Another dinosaur, I realized, my claws digging into the dirt beneath me. A rival. A Tyrannosaurus Rex. The king of this jungle. The apex predator. My mind raced, piecing together the situation. This was no ordinary encounter. This was a challenge. The T-Rex didn't notice me at first. It was too focused on the scent of the other prey nearby. But I had no intention of letting this creature get any closer. Not without a fight. Not when I had come this far. I stepped out from the shadows, my massive body crashing through the underbrush, revealing myself to the T-Rex. It froze, its massive head snapping toward me, its amber eyes locking with mine. A low growl rumbled in its throat. I didn't hesitate. Without another thought, I surged forward, my claws raking the earth as I closed the distance between us. The T-Rex let out a deafening roar, challenging me with the full force of its voice. But I was faster, quicker, more agile. The T-Rex's roar was its last warning. POV Owen Grady. I had been on the move, guiding the park staff through the chaos, when I heard it. The low rumble that shook the air, followed by the sound of crashing through the jungle. My heart skipped a beat. I knew exactly what it was, the unmistakable sound of two apex predators facing off. I didn't have time to think. The situation was getting worse by the second, but I couldn't ignore the chaos unfolding. I made my way toward the sound, not entirely sure what I was about to find, but knowing it wouldn't be good. The jungle parted before me, and there they were, two enormous figures locked in a deadly struggle. The T-Rex, its massive jaws snapping toward the Indominus, the latter moving like a shadow, its claws slashing through the air. I could hear the bone-crushing impact of each attack. The ground beneath them was cracked, the trees shaking with each collision. I watched in awe and horror as the two monsters fought, each one a true embodiment of raw power. The T-Rex had sheer strength on its side, but the Indominus was faster, more calculated. It struck with precision, using its intelligence to outmaneuver the massive dinosaur. I knew this wasn't just a battle for territory, it was personal. The Indominus had something to prove. It wasn't going to back down. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I dodged to the side as the T-Rex lunged, its jaw snapping just inches from my tail. I could hear its massive feet pounding against the earth, but I didn't flinch. I had spent years learning how to fight, how to hunt, how to be the apex predator. And now, it was time to prove it. I twisted around, raking my claws across the T-Rex's thick hide. The force of the blow left a massive gash, but it wasn't enough to stop it. The T-Rex roared in pain, swiping at me with its massive tail. I leaped to the side, narrowly avoiding the blow. But the T-Rex wasn't done. It charged again, its jaw snapping, but this time I was ready. I ducked under its massive head, my claws sinking into the soft flesh of its neck. The T-Rex howled in agony, but I didn't stop. I pressed forward, biting into the vulnerable skin, feeling the blood rush into my mouth. For a moment, everything was perfect. I had the T-Rex exactly where I wanted it. But the beast wasn't going to give up that easily. With a furious twist of its body, the T-Rex slammed its tail into my side, sending me sprawling across the ground. The impact knocked the wind out of me, but I wasn't out of the fight yet. I scrambled to my feet, my claws scraping against the dirt as I regained my balance. POV Owen Grady. I could feel the tension in the air as I watched the battle unfold. The Indominus was fast, agile, almost too much so. The T-Rex, on the other hand, was a powerhouse. Every hit it landed had the force of a freight train, but the Indominus was moving with purpose, anticipating every attack before it happened. I had to make a decision. Do I try to intervene? No. This was nature at its most brutal. And right now, I was a bystander, caught in the middle of something I didn't have the power to stop. I stayed hidden behind a fallen tree, watching in awe as the two creatures fought. It was hard to believe that these two beasts were products of human science. And yet, there they were, battling for dominance. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The T-Rex was weakening. Its steps were slowing, its roars less frequent. But I knew better than to underestimate it. The beast was tough, it wasn't going to fall that easily. I had to finish this. Now. I waited for the right moment, my muscles tensed, my eyes locked on my target. The T-Rex lunged at me once more, jaw snapping, but this time I was ready. I sidestepped, avoiding its deadly bite, and leapt onto its back, my claws sinking into its flesh. The T-Rex struggled, trying to shake me off, but I held on, using my powerful limbs to anchor myself. With a final, powerful strike, I sank my teeth into the base of its skull. The beast bucked, but I didn't let go. The T-Rex's body finally went still. I stood over the fallen predator, breathing heavily. It was over. I had won. But as I looked down at the massive creature, I realized something: there was no joy in the victory. Only the silence. POV Owen Grady. I had seen the T-Rex fall, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The Indominus had won, but at what cost? It was a predator. A monster. But it was still just a creature, just like the T-Rex. It was dangerous, too dangerous to be left unchecked. And we were running out of time. Chapter 35 The Aftermath. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The air was thick with the scent of blood, a pungent reminder of the battle I had just won. The T-Rex's body lay sprawled on the ground before me, its once mighty form now still. I stood over it, my claws digging into the soft earth, my breath coming in heavy bursts as I surveyed the scene. I had killed it. The mighty king of the dinosaurs had fallen to me. But, what now? For a moment, I stood there, lost in thought. The adrenaline that had fueled me in the heat of the battle began to dissipate, and with it came a wave of emptiness. I had defeated the T-Rex, but there was no sense of triumph. No satisfaction. What do I do now? I wondered, my sharp claws flexing into the earth. I couldn't go back to the cage. I had no more purpose there. The jungle was my domain now, but even here, I felt a gnawing emptiness. The battle had been instinctual, necessary survival, pure and simple. But now I was left with nothing but the body of my fallen adversary and the vast wilderness surrounding me. I looked up, hearing the sounds of the jungle. The distant calls of other creatures, the rustling of leaves as small prey moved through the underbrush. But none of it seemed important. None of it seemed to matter anymore. The hunt had lost its thrill. The fight had been won, but I was still, alone. A growl rumbled deep in my chest, the only sound that seemed fitting for this moment. I needed to move. I needed to feel something other than this endless void. Without another thought, I turned away from the T-Rex's body and began to move deeper into the forest, my powerful limbs carrying me effortlessly through the underbrush. The jungle was vast, and there was always something to chase, something to hunt. But even as I moved, I felt no excitement. No joy. POV Owen Grady. I had been running on pure instinct since the moment the Indominus Rex had appeared in the park, but now, after witnessing the aftermath of its battle with the T-Rex, I felt something else, something darker. The creature was unpredictable. The chaos it caused, the destruction it was all escalating. The people who were supposed to be in charge of the park had no control over it. Claire was scrambling, the board was panicking, and we were all just trying to stay one step ahead of an apex predator that had no regard for the consequences of its actions. I had no idea where to start. The Indominus had shown me what it was capable of, and now, I couldn't help but wonder what else it could do. I had seen the wreckage of its rampage, the smashed fences, the broken enclosures, the terrified animals. But even as I thought about the destruction, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were too late. We had let something this dangerous loose, and now it was on the loose. I couldn't stay on the sidelines anymore. This was no longer just a job. This was survival. POV Claire Deering. I was tired. Exhausted, even. The weight of the responsibility that had fallen on my shoulders seemed to grow heavier with each passing minute. But that was nothing compared to the weight of what had happened. My park was falling apart. And I was supposed to be the one holding it together. The news of the Indominus Rex's escape had already spread. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The last thing we needed was to deal with a creature that could manipulate its environment, outsmart us at every turn, and now it had killed the T-Rex. The one thing we had tried to use to keep the chaos at bay was gone, felled by the very thing we had created. I met Owen in the control room. His expression was grim, his eyes darker than usual. He had seen it all, the destruction, the carnage. But he wasn't one to break. He was determined. And that's why I had to listen to him. We need to get everyone off this island, he said, his voice low, controlled. It's too late. We've lost control. I wanted to argue. I wanted to fight back. But the truth was, he was right. We couldn't risk any more lives. I had to make the call. It was time to evacuate. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I had wandered for hours. The jungle felt endless, but I couldn't stop moving. My claws tore through the trees as I pushed forward, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't control. I was a beast. A killer. But somewhere deep inside, I felt like something more. Something that had been trapped. My body was not my own anymore, it was too powerful, too destructive. I had become an animal, nothing more than a shadow of the man I once was. But that didn't mean I wasn't still thinking. Still calculating. I paused for a moment, my senses alert. A distant sound. Voices. Humans. Again? I thought, a sharp growl forming in my throat. They were getting too close. They always did. And I was always forced to run. But today was different. I had made my choice. I wasn't running anymore. I turned toward the sound of the approaching humans. This time, I wouldn't retreat. I would face them. They had made me into this thing. They had unleashed me into this world, and now they would pay for it. POV Owen Grady. I was getting a report from the monitoring team when the alarm blared. A breach. The Indominus was on the move again. The plan to contain it had failed miserably. The evacuation was already underway, but there was no guarantee that we would make it out before the situation spiraled completely out of control. Claire, I said, my eyes locked on the monitor, the Indominus is heading straight for the exit. We're not going to get everyone off the island in time. I turned to her, seeing the fear in her eyes. We were running out of time. And the park's security was already overwhelmed. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I stalked through the underbrush, my body low to the ground, my senses heightened. I could hear them humans moving closer, their footsteps hurried, anxious. I could smell the fear in the air. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. I leapt from the shadows, my claws flashing in the sunlight as I crashed into the clearing. The humans froze, their eyes wide with terror. It was a moment of pure chaos. Their panic was palpable, their movements erratic. But I didn't care. They had made me into this monster. And now, I was going to make them pay. Chapter 36 The Final Stand. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I stood amidst the chaos, watching the humans scramble, their efforts futile as I loomed over them. I could see the fear in their eyes, the desperation in their movements. But none of it mattered to me anymore. They had unleashed me onto this island, and now they would witness the result of their arrogance. I growled, my teeth bared as I took a step forward. My claws scraped against the earth, a chilling sound that seemed to freeze the air around me. The humans screamed, and some ran, but they were too slow. Too weak. One of them, a man in a suit, tried to make a run for it. I didn't even think as I moved, my massive jaw snapping shut around his leg before he had a chance to escape. The scream that erupted from him was cut short, drowned by the sound of my claws tearing through flesh. The others froze in terror, their faces pale, their eyes wide with disbelief. This was the world they had created. A world where creatures like me ruled, where the natural order had been upended by their own hubris. And I was the consequence. I turned my attention to the rest of the group. They were scattered now, some taking cover behind trees, others trying to get away, but none of them would make it. Not today. POV Owen Grady. We were close. I could hear the screams in the distance. The familiar, terrifying sound that could only mean one thing: the Indominus was hunting again. I knew I couldn't reach it in time. Even if I could, I didn't know if there was anything left to save. The evacuation had barely started, and the chaos was mounting faster than we could control it. "Claire, we need to move," I said, my voice tight, urgent. "If we don't get everyone off this island now, we're not going to make it." I could see the determination in her eyes, but even that couldn't mask the fear. She knew, just like I did, that we had failed. And now the park, the dream we had all worked so hard to build, was crumbling before our eyes. "We'll take the helicopter," Claire said, her voice steady, though I could see the panic just beneath the surface. "It's our only option." I nodded, turning toward the entrance to the hangar. We had no choice. The Indominus was a ticking time bomb, and there was no telling how much longer the island could hold together. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I could sense the shift in the air. The humans were fleeing. The ones who had survived, anyway. They were running in every direction, but they were no match for me. I could feel my body trembling with anticipation, my instincts pushing me to finish what I had started. But something held me back. A strange thought, one that didn't belong in my mind. Was this really what I wanted? To wipe them all out? I shook my head, trying to clear the fleeting thoughts. The moment of hesitation passed. I had to finish it. They had created me, they had made me this monster, and now they would witness the full extent of my power. I let out a roar, the sound echoing through the trees, signaling that I was still here, still in control. POV Owen Grady. I ran through the jungle, pushing myself harder than I ever had before. The chopper was waiting, but I couldn't get to it soon enough. Claire was a few paces behind, trying to keep up, but I could tell she was struggling. "Claire, hurry!" I shouted, glancing back to make sure she was still with me. "I'm right behind you," she replied, her voice strained. The noise in the distance was growing louder, the sound of destruction. The Indominus was getting closer. We had no time left. We reached the clearing where the helicopter was parked. I saw the pilots inside, already starting to prep for takeoff. But there was no time for pleasantries. "Get in!" I barked at Claire. "We need to go. Now!" She didn't hesitate, scrambling into the chopper as I followed behind her. The blades started spinning, the helicopter rising into the air as we took off. But as we ascended, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were too late. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I watched from the treeline as the helicopter took off into the sky, leaving the island behind. A strange, empty feeling washed over me. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was something else. Regret, maybe. Or was it just the lingering remnants of the person I used to be? I couldn't tell anymore. I was a predator. A killer. I had no room for hesitation. No room for remorse. But even so, I couldn't help but wonder if there had been another way. Another path I could have taken. I turned away from the helicopter, my mind still racing, my body restless. The hunt was never over. The island had given me freedom, but it had also trapped me. trapped me in this endless cycle of violence and destruction. I roared once more, my voice shaking the leaves in the trees. The humans were gone, but I wasn't finished. I would never be finished. POV Claire Deering. We watched the island shrink beneath us as we flew away, the smoke and flames from the chaos below growing smaller with each passing second. It was over. I didn't feel relief, though. Just emptiness. The loss of something I had worked so hard to build. The destruction of a dream. I looked at Owen, who was staring out the window, his jaw set, his eyes distant. He had seen it all more than anyone should have. And now, so had I. We can never come back, I said softly, my voice carrying the weight of the reality we were facing. We're done here. Owen didn't respond right away. He just stared out into the distance, his expression unreadable. I know, he said finally. But we made it out. And that's what matters. But even as the words left his mouth, I knew he was only half right. We had survived, yes. But the consequences of our actions? Those would follow us. They always did. Chapter 37 Freedom. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The taste of freedom was bittersweet. I had no chains, no walls, no barriers to confine me. The humans were gone, fleeing the island, leaving it to me. I was no longer their experiment, their creation. I was a force of nature now, untamed and unstoppable. The world before me was one vast, open hunting ground, and I was the apex predator. I prowled through the thick foliage, my senses heightened, every movement calculated and precise. The scent of a nearby herd reached me first, herbivores, grazing peacefully in the distance. Their instinct told them to be wary, but they had no idea what I was. I moved silently, my massive feet leaving no trace in the soft earth. I crouched low, watching them with the patience of a predator who had all the time in the world. I could already feel the hunger rising in my gut, the need to hunt, to conquer. I stayed still, my eyes locked on the group, waiting for the perfect moment. One of the Triceratops in the group, a young one, wandered a little too far from the others. I saw my chance. With a roar that shattered the silence, I lunged. The Triceratops, startled, turned to face me, its horns lowered in defense. But it was no match for me. I struck fast, sinking my claws deep into its side as it tried to charge me. Its horns scraped against my hide, but they were no more than a nuisance. I twisted, using my immense strength to slam the beast to the ground. A final growl escaped my throat as I sank my teeth into its neck, ending its struggle in an instant. The rest of the herd scattered, but I didn't care. I had my prize. I tore into the carcass, devouring it hungrily. The taste of fresh meat was satisfying more than satisfying. It was life. It was what I was made for. This was freedom. POV Owen Grady. I leaned back in the helicopter seat, my thoughts 1,000 miles away. The island was already out of sight, but it still felt like the Indominus was lurking in the back of my mind. It wasn't over, not really. We had escaped, yes, but I knew that creature, that monster, was still out there. It was just a matter of time before it would find another way to make its presence known. What do you think it'll do now? Claire asked, breaking through my thoughts. Her voice was quiet, filled with a mix of sadness and uncertainty. I sighed, my hand gripping the armrest. I don't know. But I don't think it's just going to stop hunting. It's in its nature. Claire nodded, her eyes staring out of the window as if trying to see through the clouds, to see the island below. I didn't need to say anything more, we both knew what had happened. There was no going back. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. After feasting on the Triceratops, I felt stronger, more alive. My body was still restless, my mind focused on one thing, survival. The hunt had become a part of me, something deeper than just a need for food. It was instinct. It was my purpose. I walked through the forest, letting my senses guide me. Every sound, every movement, was a clue. The wind whispered of prey, the rustling of leaves, the faintest flicker of movement between the trees. I stalked another herd, this time a group of stegosaurs. Their plates gleamed in the sunlight as they grazed, unaware of the predator watching from the shadows. I crept closer, crouching low, my muscles tensing. My body seemed to blend with the environment, my camouflage perfectly matching the surroundings. I could feel the adrenaline building, the thrill of the chase already pumping through my veins. One of the stegosaurs turned, sensing something. It didn't see me, but it knew something was wrong. It bellowed to the rest of the herd, and they began to scatter, but it was too late. I launched myself forward with a speed that belied my massive size, crashing into the herd. The stegosaurus I targeted tried to charge, its tail swinging wildly, but I was faster. I avoided the swipe of its spiked tail and closed the distance, sinking my claws into its hide and biting down hard. It roared in pain, but I didn't let go. My grip tightened, and with a final, crushing blow, I took it down. Another kill. Another victory. I took my time with this one, savoring the meat. There was no rush now. No humans to fear, no cages to escape. I was free. POV Claire Deering. The helicopter ride was quiet. The hum of the blades was the only sound, and it seemed to echo in the empty space between us. I glanced over at Owen, who was still staring out of the window. "Do you think it'll come after us?" I asked softly, though I already knew the answer. Owen didn't look at me. "It's not about us anymore. It's about what it wants." I nodded, sinking into my seat, staring out at the clouds. The island was gone, but the fear, the uncertainty, the sense of failure, it would linger. We had created something we couldn't control, something that didn't belong in this world. And now, the consequences were spreading. It wouldn't end with us leaving the island. And I couldn't shake the feeling that the Indominus Rex was still hunting. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I had no need for the humans anymore. No need for their tricks, their cages, their park. This world was mine now. I roamed the island freely, living as I was meant to. No more experiments. No more watching from behind glass. I was no longer their creation, I was the creature they had unleashed. And now, the world would know what true freedom felt like. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the jungle in a golden light as I continued my hunt, my body at ease, my mind focused solely on survival. Tomorrow would be another day. Another hunt. But for now, I was alive. And that was enough. Chapter 38 The Return of the Hunt. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The island was quiet now, the echoes of my roars fading into the dense jungle. I had claimed my territory, hunted my prey, and tasted the freedom I had longed for. But the world was vast, and my instincts told me that something had changed. The scent of unfamiliar humans reached me, a different kind of human, not the ones who had fled. These were new, with a different energy, a different purpose. They were not here to escape, they were here to study, to observe, to understand. I watched them from the shadows, my keen eyes tracking their movements. They were setting up equipment, taking samples, documenting everything. They were not afraid. They were curious. I snarled softly, my mind racing. These humans were not like the others. They were not part of the past. They were part of something new, something unknown. I stepped forward, my massive form moving silently through the underbrush. The wind shifted, carrying my scent toward them. They turned, sensing something, but not seeing me. I crouched low, my muscles tensing, ready to strike. But I hesitated. These humans were different. They had not harmed me. They had not provoked me. I watched them for a moment longer, then turned and melted back into the jungle. The hunt would come later. For now, I would observe. POV Dr. Evelyn Carter. The jungle was alive with sounds, chirps, rustles, distant calls. It was a symphony of life, a testament to the resilience of nature. But beneath the beauty, there was an undercurrent of tension. We had arrived on the island with a mission, to study the creatures that had once been part of Jurassic World, to understand them, to learn from them. But there was one creature that eluded us, the Indominus Rex. We had set up our base camp near the ruins of the old park, careful not to disturb the delicate ecosystem. Our team was small but capable, each of us experts in our field. We had the tools, the knowledge, and the determination to succeed. But the island had its own plans. The first sign that something was wrong came when our equipment began to malfunction. Instruments that had been calibrated perfectly started to give erratic readings. GPS signals were lost. Communication with our satellite uplink was intermittent. Then came the sightings. At first, they were fleeting glimpses of movement in the trees, shadows that darted just out of view. But as the days passed, the encounters became more frequent, more deliberate. We were being watched. I stood at the edge of our camp, staring into the dense foliage. My heart raced, a mix of excitement and fear. We had come here to study these creatures, but now we were the ones being studied. I turned to my team. Stay alert. Keep your distance. And remember, we're not here to hunt. We're here to learn. But deep down, I knew the truth. The island was not a place for learning. It was a place for survival. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I circled the camp, staying just out of sight, my senses heightened. The humans were different, but they were still prey. They had come into my territory, and I would not let them forget it. I watched them from the shadows, studying their patterns, their habits. They were cautious, but they were not afraid. They were confident, perhaps too confident. I let them see me once, just a flash of movement in the trees. Their reactions were immediate shouts, scrambling, confusion. They were not prepared for me. I retreated into the jungle, my mind calculating. They would not leave. Not yet. They were too curious, too determined. They would stay, and I would wait. The hunt would come when they least expected it. POV Dr. Evelyn Carter. The encounter had shaken us, but we pressed on. We had a job to do, and we couldn't let fear dictate our actions. We reinforced our camp, setting up additional barriers and monitoring equipment. We established watch rotations, ensuring that someone was always on alert. But the creature was always there, just beyond our reach. It was a game of cat and mouse, and we were the mice. I couldn't help but wonder about its intelligence. It was not just a mindless beast. It was calculating, strategic. It knew how to manipulate us, how to keep us on edge. I had studied the records from Jurassic World, but they didn't prepare me for this. They didn't prepare me for the reality of facing a creature like the Indominus Rex. But I couldn't back down. Not now. We need to find its nest, I said to my team. If we can locate its den, we can learn more about its behavior, its habits. We can understand it. They nodded, determination in their eyes. We would find it. We would learn from it. And perhaps, just perhaps, we could find a way to coexist. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The humans were persistent. They searched the jungle, probing, investigating. They were looking for something they thought would give them power over me. But they didn't understand. They didn't know what I was capable of. I watched them from the shadows, my patience growing thin. They were encroaching on my territory, and I would not tolerate it. I moved closer, silently, my massive form blending with the night. I could hear their voices, their footsteps. They were near. I waited, my muscles coiled, ready to strike. But then I stopped. I could hear their heartbeat, their breath. I could sense their fear, their uncertainty. They were not hunters. They were prey. I stepped back into the darkness, retreating into the jungle. The hunt would come later. For now, I would let them think they were safe. They would learn soon enough. Chapter 39 The Reckoning. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. The air was thick with the scent of humans. It carried on the wind, teasing my senses. I had been watching them for days, studying their movements, their habits. They were careful, but careless in their own way. They thought they could control this island. They thought they could control me. But I would show them that they were wrong. I moved silently through the underbrush, my claws making no sound against the forest floor. The darkness was my ally, and I had no need for light. I could see everything, hear everything. I crouched low, hiding my massive form in the shadows. I could hear them ahead, two of them, speaking in hushed tones. They were not far from their camp. A perfect opportunity. I crept closer, my muscles coiled, ready to spring. I was like a shadow in the night, invisible to them. They were unaware of the danger lurking just a few feet away. The first one turned, his flashlight sweeping across the trees. But it was too late. In an instant, I lunged, my powerful jaws closing around his body. He screamed, but it was drowned out by the roar of my fury. The other human turned, too late to help. I slammed into him with my massive bulk, sending him crashing to the ground. I stood over them, my breath coming in heavy, angry bursts. They were nothing but prey now. I lowered my head, my jaws parting. I had to make this quick. The first human struggled, but I crushed his skull with a swift bite. The second one attempted to crawl away, but it was futile. I grabbed him by the leg, dragging him closer. He tried to scream, but the sound was cut off as my claws slashed across his throat. His life ended in an instant. The forest was still. I stepped back, looking down at the lifeless bodies. My heart pounded in my chest. The hunt was always a part of me. But this felt different. It was a reckoning. A reminder that I was the apex predator here. No one was safe. I turned and moved deeper into the jungle, my mind already focusing on the next hunt. There would be no stopping me. POV Dr. Evelyn Carter. The camp was in chaos. I had heard the screams from a distance, the unnatural, guttural roars of the creature echoing through the jungle. By the time I reached the site, the damage was done. The two men were dead. Their bodies torn apart, their screams swallowed by the island. It was clear now. The Indominus Rex was no ordinary animal. It was a hunter, a predator in every sense of the word. I knelt beside the bodies, my stomach churning. This was a failure, our failure. We had come to this island to study, to learn. But we were out of our depth. We had underestimated the creature. And now we were paying the price. I stood, my eyes scanning the area. There were no signs of the creature. It was gone, disappearing into the jungle as quickly as it had appeared. But I knew it was still out there, watching us. Get back to camp, I ordered my team. We need to regroup. And we need to figure out how to contain it. But in my heart, I knew that containment was no longer an option. We were the prey now. And the Indominus Rex was the hunter. POV Shredder, Indominus Rex. I left the humans' bodies behind, stepping over them like they were nothing. Their lives had ended, but my hunt was far from over. There were more of them. More that needed to be taught the same lesson. I moved through the jungle, my senses sharp. The island was alive, but it was mine. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, it all belonged to me. I reached the edge of the camp again, my eyes scanning the area. The humans were scrambling, trying to salvage whatever they could. They were afraid. It was evident in their movements, their panicked glances. They were starting to realize what they were up against. I grinned, though they couldn't see it. They thought they could control this island, contain it. They thought they could study me and keep me in check. But they were wrong. I waited in the shadows, watching as they moved about their camp. I could feel the tension in the air. They knew something was wrong. They knew they were being hunted. And I would make sure they felt that fear. I let out a low growl, just loud enough for them to hear. They froze. One of them looked around, eyes wide with terror. I was closer than they knew. Then I struck. I lunged from the shadows, sending one of the humans crashing to the ground with a single swipe of my claws. He screamed, but it was cut short as my jaws closed around his body, snapping it in an instant. The others scattered, but it was too late. They were already prey. One by one, I hunted them down, picking them off with precision. The forest was alive with their screams, but it was a symphony that filled me with satisfaction. When the last of them fell, I stood victorious. I let out a roar, a triumphant sound that echoed across the island. It was a warning. No one was safe here. Not anymore.